to the, August session of the Paulding County Planning Commission. I would ask at this time, if you have a mobile device, an audible device, to please silent it or turn it off so that it doesn't interrupt the proceedings of the meeting. We are going to dispense with the reading of how to participate in a public meeting, but it's simple to say that if you are wanting to take part in any of the applications, discussion of any of the applications that come before us, you will need to, not yet, ma'am. Oh, well, I'm speaking into the mic. I've never been accused of that before. I'll start over. Please turn your audible devices off. Anything that makes a noise, make sure it's silent or turned off. Anybody wishing to participate in the meeting during the appropriate application, you will come forward when it's called. I'll ask for those people who are speaking on behalf of the application, and then secondly, I'll ask for those that wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns. Both sides are allotted 15 minutes cumulative, meaning if you use 5 minutes, only 10 minutes remaining for the rest of the people to speak. So please be mindful and courteous of the people who may be coming after you and give them an opportunity. And again, questions, comments that you may have need to be directed to me, the chair. And then if there are questions that need to be asked back to the applicant, I will do so after that session is over. But we are going to dispense with the reading of participation in a public meeting. They are available in the back of the room, I believe, on the small table in the center there. If not, you can check with one of the staff members from Paulding County. They'll ensure that you have a copy. At this time, I'm going to ask the Planning Commission if you've had an opportunity to read the minutes from the previous session of this body. And have you any questions, comments, edits? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion. To approve. I have a motion to approve from Mr. Henson. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Ms. Seaver. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. There you go, Roger. And again, this is a recommending body. We will hear the applications brought before us and basically take any questions or comments or ask questions that we may have. Anything that we ask of the applicant or anybody standing at that lectern does not count against their time if the question is directed from the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners. We will then forward the case for consideration to the legal body that would be considering it in the jurisdiction that it falls in. I believe in every instance today, even though we have a long list of agenda items, all of them go to the Paulding County Board of Commissioners. Their hearing will be, correct me if I'm wrong, tonight at 7 o'clock. So if you have an interest, be you the applicant or someone who has a vested interest in it, you need to be present at tonight's meeting at 7. The applicant must be present for it to be heard, just as they must be present today for the application to be heard. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Robinson if I've forgotten anything, and if not, if you'll introduce the first application.
I will make one announcement that application 2116Z has been forwarded to the September 28th meeting. That was the Brooks application off of Hiram City Road.
Thank you very much.
First application is 2021-12Z, application by Tom Rhodes, Paulding 3 Land Partners, LLC, requesting to rezone 1 acre from R2 suburban residential to B1 general business and to operate a medical office or retail space. Property is located in land lot 531, District 2, Section 3. Property address is 238 Bill Caruth Parkway. It's in Commission Post 3. Staff has recommended approval with 6 stipulations. And we've had no noted opposition on this one. The applicant's present. And just last year, this is a small little piece of what was rezoned last year, adjoining. You can see in the demonstration on your screens. And the applicant is present.
If the applicant would please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. One other note that I'd like to make, we have additional people who are here to attend the meeting that have business before this body. They are currently seated over in the Board of Commissioners waiting area. So at the conclusion of the hearing for your application, you may at that time leave to make room for others to come in so that they can have the same right as you. If not, by the time we get down to, I believe, item number 8, we may take a small break to allow everybody to leave and bring in the next session. Either way, we're just wanting to make sure that we try to accommodate everybody as safely and comfortably as possible.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Malin Jenkins, Senior Vice President of Development for Meadows and Orly, which will be the developer on the property. We are acquiring this additional acre that was not available to us when we first closed in the original 5 acres. This squares off our property nicely, allows us to potentially build a larger medical office building or perhaps 2 buildings on the site. Helps with some access points with regards to the hospital. So again, it just really completes our overall development, squares off the site nicely. And we are actively working on pre-leasing for this building and hope to be able to move quickly as soon as we have tenants.
And sir, you're aware of the 5 stipulations that are recommended by staff, and you're agreeable to those?
Yes, sir. The one thing that I was not aware of today was the 1 access point, but I think that's probably the most logical, so we can agree to that.
Most of that will be determined too at plan review,
Sure.
which is a process that takes place outside of this body. So,
Excellent.
is there anybody on the planning commission that has questions for the applicant? Board of Commissioners, any questions to the applicant? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application, aside from the applicant? Hearing none, is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application? Hearing none, I will now entertain a motion for application 2021-12-Z.
I make a motion to approve the 5 stipulations.
I have a motion to approve with the 5 listed stipulations from Mr. Steele. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Henson. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. And again, this application will be forwarded to the next meeting of the Board of Commissioners. I will be kind of repetitive through this whole process, so don't be alarmed. For their consideration tonight at 7 o'clock, applicant must be present for it to be considered. Mr. Robinson.
Next application, 2021-15Z, application by John C. Pope requesting to rezone 2.69 acres from agricultural, A1 agricultural, to R2 suburban residential to bring property into zoning compliance and to build a single-family home. Property is located in land lot 1158, District 2, Section 3. It's located on the south side of Marshall Fuller Road, just west of McGuire Road. It's in Commission Post 2. Staff has recommended approval, and we've had no opposition noted on this application.
Is the applicant present?
I believe we have.
If you would please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair, sir.
Yes, my name is John R. Pope. I'm the father of John C. Pope. He's out of town and couldn't make the meeting today. But this particular piece of property is part of our mother's estate, Mary E. Pope. And we sold, I'm the executor for that estate. We sold this piece of property to my son, and he's wanting to build a house on there. This property actually was zoned residential until my father changed it back in the 80s, I believe. So that's what this application is for.
Thank you, Mr. Pope.
Any questions or?
I'll ask and see. Is there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Is there an existing structure or existing house on the parcel?
There is, he is building a house. He has talked to the people on the commission, and he's in the process of trying to build a house.
Okay, it just looks from the plat that there may be a.
Well, there's a little
existing
shack
parcel.
that was
Okay.
on there, yeah.
That was my
And
question.
the original house that I grew up in was demolished.
Okay,
Okay.
Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for item number 2021-15-Z.
I make the motion we approve with stipulation.
I have a motion from Mr. Leggett that we approve with, well, there's no listed stipulations. Do I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Fitzgerald. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Again, it will be forwarded to tonight's meeting of the Board of Commissioners meeting. The applicant must be present for it to be considered. Let me get ahead of myself. Am I too loud now? I feel like I'm overcompensating. Okay. I'm nothing if not interactive. Mr. Robinson?
Okay, next application, 2021-17Z, application by Perimeter Construction Group LLC, Moore, Ingram, Johnson and Steele, LLP, J. Kevin Moore, requesting to rezone a combined 2 parcels, approximately 68.28 acres from R2 suburban residential and A1 agricultural districts to low-density quality residential development district. And it would be for the development of a maximum of 126 single-family residential subdivision. Property is located in land lots 174, 175, District 2, Section 3. It's on the northerly side of Old Griffin Road and northerly intersection of South Shore Lane and North Shore Crossing, southwesterly terminus of the Briar Patch Path, and the westerly terminus of the Toby McGarity Road. It's in Commission Post 1. Staff has recommended approval with eight printed stipulations. The applicant is present. We have had numerous calls of concerns in opposition, and we have received 1 letter from an adjoining property owner, which you have in your packet.
Yes, sir. If you please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Moore. I'm here on behalf of and represent the applicant, Perimeter Construction Group, in this application for rezoning. As Mr. Robinson has stated, this is just over 68 acres, 68.28 acres, located off Old Griffin Road, which is just east of its intersection with Mount Tabor Church Road. What's being proposed is rezoning of the property from its zoning classifications of R2, which is predominantly R2, and also A1, to the low-density quality residential district for a residential subdivision with a maximum of 126 single-family homes, and that's reflected on the site plan you see on your screen. And to the extent I need to answer any questions, I have that site plan on the on the easel over there, and I can certainly answer questions as it relates to the site plan itself off of Old Griffin Road. This proposed project and residential subdivision finds itself surrounded by a couple of different zoning categories. There's a good deal of R2 zoning to its north and to the west, and some A1 zoning to the east, and then along its entire southern boundary is the Brightwater subdivision, which was zoned PRD and developed as such as a planned residential development. This proposal, as a low-density quality residential development, is proposed to adhere to and be consistent and comply with all of the development and zoning regulations applicable to the low-density quality residential category and those types of proposed developments, which give very detailed specifications on quality of homes, appearance, as well as quality of the subdivision itself in terms of how it's developed and built. In addition to that, we also have reviewed the staff recommendation for approval along with this proposed conditions that staff has and are in agreement with each and every one of those. You've also received from us a letter, a zoning condition or zoning stipulation letter that's dated August 23rd, that contains additional conditions that we're willing to voluntarily adhere to as part of this zoning application, and I'll highlight those for you as well. A little bit about this proposal at 126 homes is a density of 1.85 units per acre, which is well below the maximum density of 2.5 units per acre that low-density quality residential allows for. In addition, it's less really than the density that you find in R2 subdivisions, which can allow up to 2 units per acre, and if with sewer, up to 2.9 units per acre. So that's intentional to ensure that from a density standpoint, it's entirely compatible or less than what surrounding zoning categories allow for, and specifically the PRD category allows for, even though it's not no longer used as a category. But that gives you some context for the proposed overall subdivision, and just in terms of its density. One of the other important components of the low-density quality residential zoning category and what has been incorporated here is a perimeter buffer, a minimum of 25 feet that extends around the entire perimeter of the subdivision except for where you have your entrance. That perimeter buffer will be consistent of both undisturbed and landscape buffer, so planted heavily. And we've noted that in our stipulations and as by staff that it will be planted with a landscape plan to be reviewed, a detailed plan for them to review and approve during plan review. So there will be a combination of those two things, both planted and undisturbed. You'll also note for this proposed subdivision, there is a large existing lake and streams which come together and cross through this property. By utilizing this category, we're able to save the lake and protect those streams completely. What those do become is really an amenity for the subdivision itself and for the future residents, for them to enjoy as well as part of their overall subdivision. That just kind of highlights it and creates a central feature for the future subdivision, which we think is a good thing. It's far better than draining portions of the lake and creating additional buildable area, rather saving that existing lake and creating an amenity for and a central focus point and focal point for the subdivision is far better from our standpoint, and therefore also allows us to keep that overall density down as well. A couple of other things I want to highlight for you that are contained in our zoning condition letter that aren't necessarily required, but we think should be made known and contributed to and be part of our proposal. This proposed subdivision will have a homeowners association, and not just an association, but a mandatory homeowners association that'll have mandatory fees and dues so that all of these elements and common elements throughout the subdivision can be maintained, including the active amenity. It's a fully amenitized and has a full amenity located at the front off of Old Griffin Road that will be a part of this subdivision, helps with overall value, the price points, but more importantly for the stability and the future of the subdivision in terms of its value and price points. A particular note, I did hand out to you the proposed elevations, the types of homes that will be proposed to be built in this subdivision. And you can see from those pictures, these are homes that would be built in this subdivision. You can see those are a good number of those are side entry homes. They'll either be side entry or front entry homes, but of the same exact specifications, look, overall design and feel that you can see. A lot of mixture of brick and stone, very attractive architectural features. From an informational standpoint, these homes will be in the 400s, and so that gives you just an idea, and you can see that from the types of homes in those pictures that you see there. One of the other comments that we've reviewed in detail with staff deals with access to Old Griffith, as well as road improvements along Old Griffin Road. There are road improvements that the county is looking to put in place along Old Griffin. Two that we will be putting in place are a full deceleration lane as well as a left turn lane as part of the improvements into our proposed subdivision. In addition, staff has asked, and we have fully agreed, and just to be sure, we put it in our letter so you knew we were aware of what was being requested by the county as a $650 per lot fee to not only to help with an offset cost from the county standpoint on road improvements through Old Griffin Road, and that's the developer's contribution to those road improvements along Old Griffin Road from the county, and we're willing to do that and have set that forward in our stipulation letter. Again, we believe this proposal is one that will present for you in the future a high-quality residential subdivision with a full entrance, landscaping, and monuments on Old Griffin that'll set this apart for the value that we're proposing, with a full amenity and a subdivision with density and homes that are compatible and either exceed the look and feel of homes in the area, or certainly consistent with that. We believe the overall subdivision will be a quality addition to this area of Paulding County, and certainly in terms of the surrounding zonings and uses and existing subdivisions, we believe this fits in very, very nicely. I'm here. I can answer any questions that you may have. Also, the principal of Perimeter Construction Group, Mr. Dwayne Eady, is here as well. If he can answer any questions, we're certainly able to put him up here and have you ask him as well. With that, we respectfully request your recommendation for approval to the Board of Commissioners. Thank you.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I like what I see. So everybody can hear me. I like what I see in the front, but I'm not sure what's gonna be in the back and the sides. Is it gonna be, what type of structure?
Sure. The rears and sides would be primarily with concrete siding is the best way to put it.
Okay.
The concrete siding material, no vinyl materials, because that's not allowed in this category. With other features, windows, shutters, and some will have even water tables of brick and stone as well.
The sewer basin, which sewer basin are we looking at the runoff going into?
I believe I would need to check to be sure on that technical aspect of it from a sewer
we can-
basin. Do you know, Ray? Is it Coppermine?
Is that,
Okay.
is there access or space for this?
Well, as far as sewer availability, that's one of the things that they'll have to, it's not implied.
I see it's in section 4 of the,
Correct.
And we're aware that sewer availability cannot be guaranteed at this time, and aware of that comment from your water and sewer department,
okay.
and aware that has to be a part of that process.
What will happen if it's not available?
If sewer availability at that time is not available, then they would have to build a project or a less than project if they wanted to go forward at that time to accommodate whatever availability was there. That's going to be their risk.
Okay, a less-than project, is that what you said?
Less than in terms of number of homes. I mean,
Okay.
for example, if the availability was for something less than what we're proposing at 126, then they'll
Okay.
have a decision to make at that time. It would just largely depend on availability at that particular point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I have a question. So, Mr. Moore, a couple of things. Do you have a builder already lined up for it? Can you tell us who it is? Is there someone under
It is
contract?
Perimeter Construction Group.
Okay.
Mr. Eady will be building the homes.
Okay. And do they currently build anywhere in the county that we can see the products?
In Paulding? You currently build in Paulding, Dwayne? In Hiram?
In Hiram? Second question relates more to the development. Your lake, you said you're gonna preserve the lake. The Brightwater Lake below it, if you know the history of it, when Brightwater was developed, that lake was considered a Cat 1 Safe Dams EPD lake.
Sure.
That lake was rebuilt to handle the volume and to be used for stormwater. We didn't have water quality at the time, but is this lake gonna also be used for stormwater storage and water quality? And if it is, I'm sure the engineers are looking at the lake as far as its structural stability and evaluating it. And that will be, not to get into plan review, or that will be looked at further with them, but just wanted to remind you guys that below you at Brightwater, that lake ended up being a Cat 1 lake.
Right.
And this one, by looking at it, just estimating, I know it's a Cat 2, but it may be a Cat 1.
Sure, and their engineers have fully evaluated it and will be continuing to do so through plan review.
Okay.
Those are good notes for them to hear, so thank you for that.
And Mr. Moore, I'm sure you understand that from this body, we're simply determining if the proposed use is compliant with the comprehensive plan, future land use map, and whether or not it fits in with the area. Are there any indications or any intentions on the part of the developer to apply for any waivers as it relates to stream buffer variance, or?
We're not aware of any at this time at all.
I'm just curious. Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I have a couple. On the line that Mr. and Ms. Bennett have adjoining property, they're requesting an 8-foot black vinyl chain link fence, are you amenable to those requests?
Yes, we're certainly amenable to that.
What about the 50-foot buffer that they're requesting along that line?
Not aware of that request, but certainly we could, where that is, I would love to be able to accommodate that. So I'd have to look to see if we can accommodate it, but we're certainly happy for the fence as it relates to that additional buffer from where they are.
Can you show him, Chris, where
Yeah, I can see where, yeah, I see where they are. Talking about the Bennett's right here. Yeah, we can accommodate that in that location as
All
well.
right, thank you, sir.
Certainly, thank you.
Also, I've noticed that as part of the number 11 that y'all agreed to do the right turn lane, left turn lane, and curve improvement, can you also include an acceleration lane, since the condition of the road and the curvature of the road, it would just make it a whole lot safer that they can build some speed in case a car is coming around that curve?
We're certainly in agreement to do that if the county approves that. I wouldn't want to get in the way of public safety or
If you
public
don't
works.
mind, may we defer that to Mr. Jones?
Mr. Jones?
Good afternoon. We typically do not build acceleration lanes anymore. They're more of a hindrance and can actually cause crashes more so than help them, just because when you're accelerating, you're having to look over your shoulder. So we typically like to have people looking slightly, especially if you have a neck, back problem. It's just been proven over the years that's not really good design. That's kind of gone the way of spiral curves and stuff and such.
Yeah, I just saw there with the curvature of the road and the way everything's sitting that it might be a benefit, but if you say we don't do it anymore, thank you.
And again, this will go through the plan review process, and based on the posted speed of the road, the design features of the subdivision entrance will be designed based on that criteria contained in the AASHTO Green Book, the MUTCD, and all those other assorted manuals for roadway design.
Mr. Jones, right-of-way access appears to be rather limited as far as its access to Old Griffin. Is there enough room between where the proposed entrance is and the intersection of the convening road?
Again, that'll be looked at during plan review. We believe there is. Again, there has to be acceptable spacing from one access location to another. But again, all this will have to go through plan review to be approved.
I appreciate it. Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Is there only one entrance to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes, I'd like to reiterate, when you had said that you were going to keep the undisturbed buffer and then replant additional buffer, correct?
Yes, the 25-foot buffer would be a mixture of undisturbed and landscaped, depending on where it is.
So in the undisturbed, that meaning you're not going to disturb it, correct?
That's right. We would
Okay.
work with staff to establish where those would be undisturbed and where those would be landscaped, correct?
Okay, only because so often undisturbed doesn't necessarily mean undisturbed
Right.
to some developers. Thank you.
Understood.
And to build a couple of those streets, you're gonna have to disturb almost right up to the property line, especially the one running parallel with Brightwater,
On some of those, that's
when you
right.
get to that cul-de-sac.
Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Let me not be remiss. Mr. Hofstadter, do you have any questions to the applicant?
Just one, I see your houses are 2,400 square and it started at 400, is that kind of what you said?
Yes,
Can you tell me how many bedrooms you're kind of planning for a house for the average home?
4, yes.
Four-bedroom houses?
4-bedroom houses, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board of Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Carmichael?
A couple things. One of them, Chris, I'd like to see where that fence was gonna go that you just showed somebody. And the second thing is about mass grading. What you plan on mass grading?
While we're looking at that, I have one more question of Mr. Hufstedler. What kind of impact is this gonna be on the school system?
That's what I was just kind of figuring out there.
Yes, okay.
we're looking at the elementary school, which would be Roberts at this point in time, being approximately at build out 50 children. Middle school about 25 to 28, and high school about 25 to 28, based on historic, trends.
With the numbers that we have already, can the schools handle that?
It's going to get tighter, no doubt about it. We do need to put that in our plans with this and obviously other developments that are occurring in that area.
And there's a question remaining on the table from Chairman Carmichael as to whether or not the
Right.
developer was going to do mass grading or planned mass grading.
No, it's not planned mass grading here. There'll be some areas which, if you look at one spot, would appear to be that, but not all areas whatsoever will be mass graded. That's the beauty of this site. It's got the stream buffers and lake and so forth. They're gonna have to be protected.
Further questions? Board of Commissioners, any other questions? All right, Mr. Moore, at this time, you have about 6 minutes remaining. If you need to come up and clarify anything, or if we have questions, we can call you back up. At this moment, you can take your seat.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Hearing none, is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? If you would please come up, line up by the podium. First person there, please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. Each successive person will do the same thing. And the chair is me.
I'm Pat Bailey. I've lived at Brightwater now 16 years. I've been on the board for the last 6 years until January of this year. And I've been kind of laying low with the knee replacement. So I have questions from a number of the homeowners. And we've even previously met with some of the members of this development team. I believe it's the same team we met with. Our main concern, well, we have several, of course. We are south and downstream of this property. The lake on this property feeds a stream which feeds our lake. We're having a problem now with silt and very concerned about what's going to happen with all the disturbance of the soil and the trees. I know there is an area, a floodplain area, at the southern end of this property that you can't build in. And that was one of the reasons we met with him. But I don't hear any discussion today about not disturbing that floodplain. The lake, the stream for the lake runs under North Shore Crossing at the western end into the lake, and then out the lake through the spillway and through another creek to Powder Springs Creek. We're all in that watershed, that same watershed. We're in it as well. And my concern is, where's all that water gonna go?
Generally, I will collect all the questions and then come back to ask
Okay.
the applicant once we're through. But let me address yours right now. This is simply to consider whether or not their proposed use is acceptable for the area. Is it an
Okay.
approved use? However, your concerns will be more directly addressed through the Paulding County professional services here that you see before you with Director Jones from the DOT, Director Wooten over here with Paulding County Water. They will all be doing what is called plan review, where they have to look at the stormwater impact that's going to be caused by the development. The director or the director there or his staff will ensure that that precautions are put in place to keep and minimize to the greatest degree possible any impacts downstream, particularly of sedimentation control. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you it takes the community working with the contractor to identify when problems begin and address them as early as they possibly can. Do not be shy about doing so if this development moves forward. Again, this is no guarantee. This is a hearing.
Right.
So-
So eventually there'll be a planning review, which you mentioned.
There will be a plan
That we
review and
can-
it's professional
right.
services. That's generally between the county's professional staff and the developer, but they are there to hold them accountable to the development standards of the county and the state EPD and the federal EPA requirements for developments.
Okay, very good. Another of our main concerns, which has been somewhat addressed here, is the entrance off of Old Griffin. That's a very tight situation right there with that much more traffic. Old Griffin has just, I guess people are coming from the west, cutting through Old Griffin and East Paulding. In the years I've lived there, the traffic has grown tremendously. We've lobbied for the 16 years I've been there for a light at Dallas Highway and Old Griffin, and not been successful. But this really concerns me too, that that's even more traffic in those two, that point and at Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor is almost a blind spot when you pull out. HOA, Transport County, we got a number of houses. As far as the lake, I have talked to the current or previous owner. Our lake was, as you mentioned, was changed from a Category 2 to a Category 1. And one of the things we would ask for is that an engineer look at this lake and make sure that it's up to standards. We just, in the last week, finished our engineering studies for our permit, Safe Dams permit. $50,000 is what we spent. So we're very, very concerned about water coming into the lake, where it's gonna go, and the spillway. But I don't know, I couldn't find it on the list. Is there a name for that lake? Anybody know?
Which one?
The one on this property.
Larry built it.
But the state has a list. They call our lake, it used to be
If you
Lost
please
Mountain.
direct your comments to me.
Oh,
ma'am.
I'm sorry.
That's all
It's
right.
now Brightwater Lake Dam. So I couldn't look up to see if it's still Category 1 or Category 2. But, and I believe part of it is built with railroad ties. So that concerns me, the dam. Multiple builders. I think that is probably it. You mentioned the barrier of a fence on the other side, I think it is. But, so as I understand it, there will be a 25-foot
Buffer.
buffer of vegetation.
It will be planted or undisturbed.
Yeah,
as-
there's
as-
some there already. Okay. And can I ask, what is the green area?
It's agricultural.
Oh, okay.
You know, it delineates a different zoning category for the
Okay,
property.
very good. Threw me off. My eyes are not that good. Okay.
Mine either.
I believe that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
If you would please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. Over to the left, or your right of the lectern.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't sign in.
My name is Lucille Hunter. Would you please pull up the plot map for the homes?
I will assume they will do so. I don't control it.
Okay. When you come into the entrance to that new development, what is the thing to the right? Is that the is that going to be the pool?
It appears to be the common area amenities, like a clubhouse and then tennis courts, probably a pool, if I'm reading it correctly.
Okay, my daughter has I can't read it. Is it number 2 lot, the kind of the pie-shaped one?
Number 2 is up to, oh, I see what you're saying, in Brightwater.
Yes,
Okay,
in
I'm sorry.
Brightwater.
I see that.
Okay, what kind of fence are they talking about putting up there?
If that is the area, is that the area for the planted buffer and the fence, Chris? Just to make sure that I'm clear.
And in this area here is just the planted buffer of 25 feet.
Okay.
If you notice the lot that my daughter lives on, a variance has already been given on that lot. So there's very little room back there. So there's no wall or anything that's going up there, just the buffer?
I will ask when we bring the applicant back forward.
I will be hiring an attorney for this, to see that it's, because there should be some type of wall that goes up there for these first 2 homes because of the variance that gave on that lot, that Paulding County gave. That they're gonna be in her backyard. Either that is going to have to be moved someplace else, but
Well, just to be clear, this is not an approved site
I know
plan.
it
It's a
is. I know it
proposed
is.
site
Yeah.
plan. And I'm not gonna tell you not to, or to hire a lawyer. What I would recommend is that once this meeting is over, if you have the time and the developer is available, that you go and speak with them directly about your concerns. You may be able to save yourself some legal fees by doing so.
well, this just really, the entrance, the 2 entrances probably 250 feet apart at the most.
Mhm.
And the traffic on Old Griffin Road right now is so severe that if there was another exit out for them, we wouldn't complain as much, but I would like to talk to the developer, please. Thank you. I also live in the subdivision. I live on South Shore Lane in the same subdivision.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sir, if you would. Sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Yes, I'm Ricky Mayfield. I live straight across from Old Griffin Road from these 2 subdivisions. Straight across the road from Brightwater. I own partially the property that, upper driveway is right there at the curve, at the hill where the entrance is gonna be. I know y'all gonna do what you wanna do, but Griffin Road can't handle no more traffic. I mean, it's already a racetrack, you know. And from Brightwater, from certain times of day, I can't even hardly get out of my driveway. And not blaming them, but the dealerships are using that as a racetrack, test track up through there. You pull out and somebody's done run right up on you. Plus, the top of the hill there, where the curve is my property. They keep talking about turning lanes and stuff. Is that gonna affect, they gonna come in there and take my property for any of this? You know, when they work on the road? And, but the right of way and the entrance is the main concern of safety. And the traffic, water supply, I just spent money within the last year having new water service put into my old house. I got 32 pound of water pressure coming straight off the meter, which they had to come under the road
from Brightwater side. But, I mean, outside of doing something inside of my home to get the water pressure up, you know. But also the sewage, I'm still on a septic tank. But I don't, apparently there's sewage problems somewhere, cause about once a month, the sewage truck's going from up at the, across from Mount Tabor Park to the one down below us, hauling sewage backwards and forwards, so apparently something's not working somewhere. And taxes, everybody's property taxes is going up. Mine went up. All these hundreds and thousands of houses being built, property taxes ought to come down. More people are paying taxes. Why come they ain't coming down some? It keeps going up every year. And I guess that's about it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns? If you come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Guess I don't need this, since we all have cooties now together.
We have a couple of minutes remaining for the time, just so you know.
Okay. So I do not live in any of the subdivisions.
We'll start with your name,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry. My name is Cynthia Wise. I live, Pat Bailey, hey. I live across the street from Brightwater, but in between both creeks on the, I guess, the south end of Briar Patch Path. I'm in between both creeks. So Powder Springs Creek is the name of one creek, and then the other creek is, I'm not sure what the name of it is, but that's the one that also flows into your lake across the street. And your lake name is...
Direct your comments to me, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. The lake name is Lost Mountain Sportsman Club Lake. I think that's what it was, instead of it being Brightwater. It changed again. So anyway, I am in between both of the creeks. One of my main concerns is how close to that creek is this property gonna come? Because I can't tell exactly with these visuals unless I'm, specifically talking to someone and getting details. But how close will I be to those creeks? Will the property be to those creeks? I know they're gonna protect the waterways. Are there any endangered species in there? Do we have any, I don't know if it's the ecosystem that's gonna be disturbed or not, but I know January last year, I was recovering from a neck surgery, and they had trucks out there, and they were hitting things, banging on things, and I was going out the door trying to figure out what's going on. But where do you get that kind of information to find out what's going on in your community? Because I know it's probably based on all this new planning and zoning that was going on with this new subdivision. They had to work on this ahead of time. One, are the creeks going to be protected? Like what Pat was saying, is the silt going to flow into the creek? And then if they come across that creek, am I going to have to hurt them? That's my next question. I'm just saying.
If they come across that creek, what?
Am I going to have to hurt them?
Oh. I don't think I'll record that statement, but okay.
That's just the old day stuff.
Okay.
So, do you answer those questions, or I just sit and talk about them?
I will address whenever we go to the applicant.
Okay. I can go sit down now?
Yes, ma'am. We have a very short minute left.
It'll be quick. My name is Heather Lee, and we live, my husband's Joe Lee. We live at 258 Briar Patch Path, which is at the top northeast, I believe. Not in the corner, but directly above it. And the creek, it basically kind of lines our property. My question is, we just bought it last month, so we kind of bought it for privacy and everything. So with this proposed, the top end of that, there would be a huge, like cul-de-sac there. Will they create a buffer zone between that, like the back of those houses, then there would be the creek and possibly, so they're not tearing all the vegetation and we have to look at the back of all these houses now. That's my question.
Okay.
So, and concern.
Thank
We're
you.
kind of above the hill, so I don't think we have to worry about the water, but I do feel for all of those others, so that's all my concerns there.
Thank you for your comments.
All right,
Just to address a couple of things, we covered it earlier in the discussion, I believe with Ms. Bailey, but just to reiterate, when it comes to drainage protection of the creek, there are requirements that they will be held to in development and plan review, and inspections that take place assuming that this is an approved development and it clears all the hurdles. They will have to be inspected by the Paulding County's professional staff, who will go out and make sure that they are staying compliant with state environmental laws, as well as building, construction, life safety code, and every other code you can possibly imagine. So again, it also comes back to participation with the community as well as with the developer. If you see sedimentation occurring in the streams, if you see muddy water, you don't need to just think someone is going to take care of it. You need to report that. Preferably go and tell the developer if you have a contact number with them, but if not, then notify the county and they'll send the correct people out to deal with it. The buffer requirement, provided that there is not a variance granted, which is the reason I asked at the outset if there were any anticipated variances that the developer were considering. The buffer requirement for the creeks is 25 feet from a stream bank. That's the state requirement. The county has adopted a provision that requires an additional 50 feet. So 75 feet from the top of the stream bank. There should not be any disturbance within that area. If there is, again, that would be a violation that can be handled by the enforcement arm of Paulding County if it's witnessed and somebody reports it. At this time, I will ask if the applicant can come back to the lectern. As I mentioned earlier, you have about 6 minutes remaining of your time. If you would like to voluntarily address any of the concerns that were numbered here, you may do so, or we'll have questions for you after. We'll probably have questions for you anyway.
Thank you for the opportunity, and certainly I can answer the questions that I wrote down according to my notes, and if I miss any, I'm happy to answer ones I've missed. And I'll also add some context. There was a number of questions, and I thought you did an excellent job covering how stormwater is managed and controlled, as well as where that finds itself during plan review and the requirements that we have on us as the developer, and meeting all of the requirements of Paulding County. But to make two quick notes about it, again, we are providing full protection according to the stream buffer ordinance without asking for variances. We'll also be conducting studies, further studies not only of this lake that's on this property, but of the lake in Brightwater. We have to understand that for our stormwater purposes about capacity downstream and making sure that we're being consistent with that. So that's just a little information that hopefully can help folks with their understanding of how this unfolds. Also, as it relates to traffic impact, I want to remind folks that unlike other developments that have been approved here, we are voluntarily agreeing to the contribution for system-wide improvements along Old Griffin Road at no small sum of $650 per lot, which was requested of us and which we voluntarily agreed to do, which will help with certain traffic improvements and road improvements along Old Griffin Road as determined by the county. But also, I think it's important just in terms of overall number of homes. The large majority of this property is already zoned R2, probably 60-40, 40% zoned A1, but the surrounding area is zoned R2 with PRD. We're proposing density of 1.85 units per acre. Even as R2 zone property, that usually gets you up around 2 units per acre, even under that ordinance. So we're not putting really more homes on this property or proposing to put more homes on this property than really what it's already zoned for and what the surrounding area is already zoned for, just through the design features. Importantly, though, the low-density quality residential category contains infinitely more conditions and qualifications and requirements than the R2 does in terms of the buffers, in terms of house size, in terms of house design, in terms of how you go about building a subdivision and injecting that quality into it, and that's what we're providing here. To answer a few more specific questions, I believe it was Ms. Hunter pointed out lots 1 and 2 in Brightwater and was asking about some type of barrier beyond the 25-foot fully landscaped visual screening buffer, and we're certainly willing to install an 8-foot fence along that boundary line as well. We think that's appropriate there, and happy to do that and include that as part of our development plans. Likewise, I think there was a question from the last speaker, Ms. Lee, I believe who it was, regarding her property in the northwest corner. And just wanted to note for you, if you look at our site plan and where that property is located, it's heavily buffered by the stream buffers that will be in place in that northeast corner. So she will have a great deal of undisturbed buffer adjoining her property, with very little disturbance even coming close to her. I think there's only 3 lots that are fairly deep lots that will be adjacent to her property in that northeast corner, which is that top right on the site plan. And so hopefully she'll be able to see that and can understand that that property is being heavily protected by what we've planned so far. Those are the responses to the questions that I wrote down, and certainly happy to answer any more that you may have.
So just to clarify, and maybe pull Chris in on this, the existing zoning as it stands today would allow, without having to go through a hearing, would allow a higher density of housing than what is being proposed in this rezoning?
The current zoning, especially the R2 portion, would allow up to 2 units per acre. And there's the minimal house size in the R2 district is 1,100 square feet heated space.
Mm-hmm.
There's no architectural standards, and there's no buffer requirements in the current zone.
Okay.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you also, Chris, is since we established the LDQRD standard, doesn't seem like we've had anything come close to what the original concept of that was. Is that something that's going to be continuing?
I would, from a staff standpoint, in our residential zoning categories, it's one of our better quality ones because it does have streetscaping, landscaping standards, sidewalks on both sides of the road. It requires architectural standards for homes. It requires a minimum 2,400 square foot house with 2,000 square feet heated space. It requires extra buffers. For example, the PRD Brightwater only requires a 15-foot buffer along the perimeter. This requires 25. It also requires garages be set back 25 feet, so you wouldn't have cars parked in the sidewalks. It's one of, when this came into, when it was adopted back in, I think it was 2007, economy crashed, and we're just now getting to the point where we're having more residential rezonings, since a lot of our lots that were out there are disappearing, and this is the more of the what that was geared toward. It just happens to be starting about 10, 12 years late.
Thank you.
The lake, Mr. Moore, as you said, you would be doing a study both on the lake on the developer's property as well as the lake downstream. Structurally speaking, will that be taken into account, the structure of the lake? Because, I mean, anything that were to happen that would breach a dam, obviously downstream, you become liable for anything that, or the developer would, the owner of the property would, for anything that took place downstream. So is that part of the consideration by the developers, looking at both the ecology as well as the structure of the dam?
It's exactly what types of things they're looking at, and there's a lot more than that, but they have to make sure that the downstream analysis, that what they're doing from a stormwater standpoint not only meets and exceeds county requirements, but state requirements when dealing with a downstream lake, especially one that's right adjacent, almost adjacent to it. So it'll take that into account to ensure the stormwater management that's occurring on our property doesn't overwhelm the stormwater management that exists in Brightwater. That's exactly part of that analysis.
Okay, and you addressed the 2 lots that hold the common amenities, at least on the proposed site plan. That is not the finished site plan.
Correct.
Things may change.
They could, but if there's an amenity there, then we would put that fence in place there.
Okay.
Have you looked internally to see if you could replace it with a different location?
Certainly there's another place you could put it. That just seemed like it's a natural location to have an entry amenity, so that there's a kind of a welcoming as you come home, or for new home buyers or future home buyers, you come home and there's this great amenity with a clubhouse, pool, and so forth to set off the subdivision. Then you move into the homes as you go from there. So that's why you see that oftentimes in that design.
Because you may end up, if you do move it, you're gonna end up with roughly 4 to 5 lots right there.
Correct. You would just swap it out.
Still gonna be behind somebody's house, it just won't have a fence.
Right.
And I believe the concern, you mentioned already that you would be investing voluntarily money that would go toward assisting in a traffic improvement, whatever the activity ends up being by the Department of Transportation with Paulding County. Believe we had Mr. Mayfield had mentioned about his concern with safety, having a driveway directly across from the proposed entrance. Are there any precautions, and again, Director Jones may be more in line to answer this, are there things that you will look at that will help mitigate those safety concerns, or make that a point to look at that?
Yes, exactly. You know, with the, going through the plan review process, they will look at site distances. They will look to be sure that it meets for the posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour on this roadway. Again, everything we do is based on meeting those standards for roadway design. One of the thoughts for the contribution towards this road, Old Griffin Road, is in need of repaving at some point pretty soon, and the thought was to take some of this contribution and put it towards that road paving, and also some shoulder widening on the road going from 120 to Mount Tabor. So where we can, add 2-foot shoulders on each side. That's always something that helps with giving you a little bit more area.
Okay. One of the comments made that actually does not necessarily relate to the development is the concern of the speed of the roadway due to test driving and cut-throughs or whatever. Do you think what you just said would actually help address those issues?
Well, again, I would say that what it will do is just help you, gives you more area. So let's say somebody is not paying attention, or there's distracted driving, which we know unfortunately goes on this road and every other road in the United States. Gives you a little bit more area to recover. So that's what we're looking at in terms of that. You know, Old Griffin Road, depending on where you are, the traffic, I think south towards or north towards Mount Tabor, you're looking at roughly 1,400 to 18 vehicles per day. This is the last 5 years of data before COVID hit. Since COVID hit till now, traffic is starting to normalize again. We're going off that data right now. About 1,400 to 1,800 vehicles, and on the north side of, the south side of Old Griffin, as you get closer to 120, you're looking at 2,500 to 2,600 vehicles per day.
Is that a lot for this type of road?
Not, I mean, I guess I would use the term lot. I wouldn't put it in those terms. You know, typically a county road, if it's decently designed, and again, depending if it has turn lanes or no turn lanes, but you're looking at a typical 2-lane county roadway can handle up to 13,000, 14,000 vehicles per day before degrading into a lower level of service.
Okay.
I would say that this subdivision size right here, you're looking at about 1,200 trips per day additional traffic on this roadway, depending on which way they go, either left or right out of the subdivision.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the Planning Commission? Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I have one. With the present zoning, how many houses could you build at the present zoning that you have now?
And I'm going to estimate just based on kind of, with the present zoning, if we didn't rezone the A1 section of this property, even though it's surrounded by, most everything else, probably around 100.
Okay. All right.
If we didn't rezone the A1, but
Yeah.
that would certainly come in as part of building a subdivision here to R2. So,
Thank you.
sure, thank you.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners?
Maybe not as much as a question, but maybe just a comment or a suggestion, is if it does pass, by listening and the lake being downstream, it ain't my job to tell the developer what to do, but a survey of that lake downstream, not just the down part, but I mean a survey of the silt and stuff like that could really help, because if you do mess up, though, I do want front row tickets if you go across the street. So I think she's got you. But not just as suggestions. I mean, just because I've seen and heard, been part of too many. Well, the lake was in this shape beforehand, so I don't know why developers sometimes don't spend that extra up front to save them a lot in the rear by doing a true lake survey, because, you know, water, wind, it's kind of like the coffee. Your coffee is black because it goes through a filter, but water sometimes, because when it rains, especially the rain we've had in the last 3-4 years especially, there's a lot of discolored water, but it's not always silt, but sometimes it is blowout silt. So just having that true survey would by far, I think, help answer a lot of questions down the road. So it's not.
I agree with
Thank
that.
you for
Most
that
lakes are glorified retention ponds anyway. They collect sediment and need to be dredged from time to time. Before we go any further, Mr. Hofstadter, did you have any further information you wanted to provide or questions?
No, sir.
All right. Board of Commissioners, I didn't want to miss the school district, so.
Hey, George, are there any other scheduled road improvements on Old Griffin Road at this time?
Not at this time, but we will, look at any suggestions or comments from the board, citizens, et cetera.
No further questions?
Hey, Jody, just
Mr. Dunn?
following up, George, how about a traffic study? Is that gonna be performed?
Not as part of this development, we do not require that of this development.
George, when was the last traffic study on this road?
I don't know if there ever was a traffic study done, honestly. The Brightwater subdivision that was built, I don't know if that was before I started with the county, I do not know if that was.
Thank you.
I'm looking at just Old Griffin, but periodically.
Are there any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank
Let me
you for
take
your
a seat.
questions. Commissioners, thank you for your comments.
Mr. Phillips, do you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I know it's always your practice to restate in the event there is any sort of a motion to approve those additional voluntary stipulations that the applicant has stated from the podium. And I know that's typically your practice, and I think that would include an 8-foot black vinyl chain link fence as one of those, a 50-foot buffer on another border was one of those. But I would also, as a housekeeping matter, listening to Mr. Moore's presentation, I would recommend that in the event there is a motion to approve, that you add as an additional stipulation to incorporate the additional 16 voluntary stipulations that were set forth in his August 23rd, 2021 stipulation letter, to the extent they do not conflict with the Paulding County Code. The other, what I don't want to see happen is in the event of approval, no mention is made of that, and all of a sudden those are off the table.
Got it.
I was gonna ask you that.
Yes, sir.
You were.
Yeah.
Okay. At this time then, Mr. Steele?
Can we discuss them with relation to the 8-foot chain link? I don't think that's what they were speaking of. Was it privacy, as in wooden or vinyl coated, or vinyl fencing, not chain link? As it relates to the lot 1 and 2 of Brightwater.
Just to clarify, because I think it's a good clarification question, for the fencing that we had agreed to do along the Bennett property, the specific was an 8-foot black vinyl chain link fence along the Bennett property, which we're agreeable to. For lots 1 and 2, we're agreeable to do an 8-foot privacy fence if that's what they're looking for there. That would associate with the amenity, so it would be maintained by the HOA for that short segment. Which certainly, if those owners would prefer it to be the black vinyl coated chain link, we'll do that as well. The fence is for their benefit, not for ours, so I don't want to dictate
Right.
to them type of fence.
I think I understood from her comments was
And that's it-
visibility, when she
Right.
used the word wall,
Correct.
that I think I would rather see if we stipulated that
And that's agreeable to us.
that it's a privacy fence,
Sure.
not chain link.
And that's agreeable to us. Thank you for that
Thank you.
clarification.
Jody, I would also like to add,
Oh.
I would also like to recommend and add to the stipulation what Brian had mentioned about seeing if they would agree to a survey of the lake.
Well, are you agreeable to, as you were gonna do the lake survey anyway, you're agreeable to that?
Yes, we're agreeable to a pre-development sedimentation study of the lake, absolutely. As a lawyer, I highly recommend it, just like the commissioner was stating.
Is this of both lakes or just your lake?
The sedimentation study will be of their lake, but we'll be doing a different type of evaluation of our lake.
Just making sure everybody understood it was Brightwater Lake.
Yes, thank you.
Brightwater Lake. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. I'm not gonna rush him. He's volunteered to write all this down, so I'm gonna.
Mr. Chairman.
Don't add to me. No, go ahead.
There's two, that would be an additional stipulation to the letter, and also the extra buffer from 25 feet to 50 feet along the Bennett property line would also be a separate condition if y'all choose to do that.
Okay.
Those are not in the applicant submitted letter.
Do you need me to restate that?
Yes.
Are you good?
Yeah, I've got it done.
He's got it, okay. So at this time, with no further comment, I'm going to entertain a motion with regard to application 2021-17-Z.
I make a motion to approve with the 8 stipulations along with number 9. The developer agrees to a 8-foot black vinyl chain link fence along the Bennett property line with a 50-foot undisturbed buffer. Number 10, along lot 1 and 2 of Brightwater, an 8-foot privacy fence. Number 11, incorporate the voluntary 16 stipulations of the developer. And number 12, agree to survey of the Brightwater Lake for quality. Was there anything else?
Did that encapsulate your concern?
Yes.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
does that work for you? So we have a motion to approve from Mr. Leggett with the 8 original steps and the 4 added stipulations. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
I have a second from Mr. Steele. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Again, this will be forwarded to tonight's meeting of the Board of Commissioners at 7 o'clock. Applicant must be present for it to be considered. Anybody having an interest in it should be present also. Also, take the opportunity, if you have a chance, to speak with the developers if they're available, so that you might be able to address some concerns that you may have, as we mentioned earlier in the discussion, between now and then. All right. If this carries us to agenda item number 5. Give it just a minute for anybody who wishes to leave, please do so. Thank you. Hold on. Yeah. We're in motion. If you wish to watch the remainder of the meeting, you can do so from the comfort of the Board of Commissioners waiting room. I need one. Yeah. Might as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we could ask you to go ahead and clear the room, because we're going to get started. We have people that are waiting just like you did. I will leave off the gavel. I don't think I need it. So, Mr. Robinson, if you would
Okay.
call the next application.
Next application is 2021-18Z, application by Lead Engineering LLC, Jonathan Jones, requesting to rezone 54.37 acres from R2 suburban residential district to low-density quality residential district for development of 133 single-family residential lot subdivision. Property is located in land lot 245, District 2, Section 3, south of 628 Mount Tabor Church Road. It's in Commissioner Post 1. Staff has recommended approval. Make sure I got them. 8 stipulations. And we've had several calls with questions and concerns. Applicant is present.
The applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Planning Commission, Board of Commissioners, staff, and public. My name is Jonathan Jones. I'm here representing Tabor Road LLC for the proposed development of 133 single-family residential homes under the LDQRD, which is Low Density Quality Residential District category. Once again, to further reiterate, that category is the most stringent single-family development use that we currently have in the ordinance from an architectural control standpoint and perimeter buffer requirement. The current zoning of the property is R2, which being on sewer would allow for 2.9 units per acre. The proposed density is 2.45 units per acre, so its current use zoning would be more readily available lots than the proposed use. And the current use would allow 1,100 square foot single-family homes, whereas the proposed use would require the 2,400 single-family homes with the offset garages and requirements for, things that makes it more of a quality use. The property use, which is what we're discussing at this hearing, meets the comprehensive plan. It meets the future land use map, and staff has recommended approval. My client has reviewed the zoning stipulations, and they are amenable to the zoning stipulations. Mr. Frank Owens is a owner of a property directly to our east. By way of negotiations for a sanitary sewer outfall easement, we want to add 2 voluntary stipulations that relates to Mr. Frank Owens' property. Number 1 should read that we will provide a 6-foot wooden privacy fence along Mr. Owens' property for the entire length as it abuts said development. Secondly, no detention pond will be located to discharge upstream from his home, as he has currently some water-related flooding issues across his driveway. So the only detention pond that we would discharge would be on our southeast corner, which is below his home. So we'll discharge all of our stormwater into the creek that's below his home and none into the outfall stream that comes off Mr. Paris's property and then goes onto Mr. Owens' property, ultimately crossing his creek and tying into the southern creek as discussed. A couple things that I think is worth noting. The water system in this location has some pressure issues. And the developer is going to take on the financial burden of replacing an existing old system with an upgraded system. that will cost in the neighborhood of about $700,000. The outfall sanitary sewer will be required to flow to the old Griffin lift station that's down below the Costco. That outfall will cost over $500,000. The left turn, right turn that's required according to zoning stipulations is another $250,000. And then there's a voluntary stipulation for a DOT funding to help mitigate other traffic concerns in this area of $650 per lot. So the grand total of investment for this development for 133 lots is right at $1.5 million, which is quite substantial, frankly. The other thing, there's 2 detention ponds proposed. One will be on the west side of the creek that we are planning to cross. The other is on the southeast corner. Those are the only 2 intended detention ponds. There'll be 1 stream crossing. We intend to adhere to all of the state, federal, and local requirements as is required for crossing a stream like that. Just so you guys know, the mitigation costs, just to give you an example, for any creek crossing is typically running mitigation alone about $100,000 that you pay to basically buy the credits from the Army Corps of Engineers for said crossing. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have or use the remainder of my time for rebuttal.
Jonathan, what property line was that?
It would be against Mr. Frank Owens. He owns the property to the east of our development.
Okay.
Mr. Frank Owens.
There, right there.
Okay.
Is there only one entrance and exit to this?
Yes, sir. That's the only road that we physically abut to. We did evaluate trying to tie in, coming in with a secondary entrance to Forest Hills, which is a PRD located to the south side. One, the HOA was not overly willing to cooperate with that. We also discussed possibly tying into California Ball Field. They likewise, due to accessibility to the rear of that recreational park, was not open to that concept. We do not physically touch Old Griffin, which it sounds like is a good thing because I don't think we want to tie into Old Griffin Road. So it is the only location that we have for entry.
Square footage?
There'll be a minimum of 2,400 square foot. Talking to them, I think the smallest model they have is 2725, and they're going to go up to 3625. They also have an optional third car garage that they anticipate about 25% of these homes will include.
Who is the builder?
It's LGI.
What is construction of the houses?
I'm sorry.
The construction of the houses, gonna be brick, stone?
It's a brick or stone front, offset garages, large porches. The patio and rear deck will be a minimum of 12 by 12, but they have an upgrade package to go to 16 by 16. These lots are 80 foot wide, 12,000 square foot minimum, so they're pretty large lots as it relates compared to like a PRD or something such as that. And once again, there's a perimeter buffer that's 25 foot that we have to adhere to all the way around the property. But yeah.
Okay. And the sides and the back, what are they constructed of?
It'll be a minimum of hardy plank. Most of them will be hardy plank.
Gonna be any skirts around them? Brick or stone skirts?
I know that the front has a requirement according to the architectural controls. Not to my knowledge is anybody being required for a skirt around the 3 sides, but I know that the front will be brick or rock, a combination all throughout, so.
Cost factor of the homes?
Cost factor of construction or the sale of the home?
Sale.
They said from the 3s to the 4s. So I would imagine that means a starting point in the mid 3s and it will encroach into the 4s. And they're anticipating about a 32-month build out from completion of development. So this is about a 4-year project.
Will this community be a covenanted community with HOA?
Mandatory homeowner association, yep, coveted, all of the requirements set forth in the LDQRD. And that's the good thing about the LDQRD is it does mandate that, so there's no real way of skirting around it.
Can the Copper Basin sewer handle this?
It is copper mine. You know, once again, as previously said, sewer is not expressively implied, but to my knowledge and what because we designed the lift station that's downstream that this go to, I'm pretty sure that there's not a capacity issue. I know that Costco just tied onto that same system. So I think that the capacity is good. And I'm working on some other projects on the south end of the county that we discussed last month in zoning that will relieve a lot of the flow that's already going to Copper Mine. So in theory, it should be a balancing act where it shouldn't be an increase when it's all said and done from this community to that one.
Any amenities proposed?
There's going to be an amenity. 133 lots is kind of a teeter-totter. As it stands right now, they're proposing a large cabana with a fire pit and a playground. They may convert that to a pool and cabana and omit the playground. They have not finalized that decision because they're not 100% sure if the demographics is going to be older kids or younger kids. They are pretty sure that this is going to be predominantly second and third time home buyers, that their kids are either in high school or going into college. So playground may not be warranted. They're not completed with their demographic study on it yet to determine, but there will be an amenity. It's required by zoning anyway, by the zoning ordinance.
Question, is this the same school district that the other?
It is, yeah. And according to Mr. Osterlander's numbers, I jotted those down. I think it would probably be somewhere around 60, 30, 30, give or take. He can probably run the numbers, but yeah, you know, East Paulding High School, Roberts Elementary, and East Middle. So
is that going to be an issue?
The one I'm most concerned about right now is Roberts at this point, but we'll do some calculation.
Any other questions from the planning commission?
Can you explain, I know you and I know each other a long time, and you get real fast.
I know, I get going too fast.
So can you slow down and explain what you were talking about with replacing water to help with the water?
Okay, so there is an old bladder system that is across the street. I believe it's on Deborah Lane, and that water bladder system, for all intents and purposes, it's kind of like a really large bathtub that holds water, and then they put a booster pump on it, and it supplies additional pressure so that those homes in that area can, one, you know, take showers on the second floor and such as that, but more importantly, that fires can be fought. Well, Paulding County has a requirement that says that you have to have 1,000 gallons per minute at 20 PSI to meet the threshold that's required by the fire protection, I think it's code 14, for fighting fires. And so the only way that we can accommodate that here, and it's the same way that we had to do in Forest Hills, who's directly south, they have a booster pump in their subdivision. So when you pull in Forest Hills, if you look beside the amenity, you'll see a building there. And inside that building, there's a booster pump system. And that's exactly what it does. It holds the water, builds up the pressure, and makes sure that in the event that there's a fire, the fire can be fought. You won't run out of water, you won't run out of pressure, such as that. So we will, by doing the investment and improving that system, we will actually improve all of the water, not only for this development, but probably for everything in that Denton Manor subdivision, up and down Mount Tabor. It will improve whoever's tied to the main, of which we're going to be tying that booster pump system. So we're basically taking like a 1978 Volkswagen and replacing it with a 2021 Cadillac. That's kind of how it is, and it's it's almost a $750,000 project. Edison Engineering, who's a local engineer, Chuck Brand, they're the ones who've been working with the county's engineering consultant to determine what was needed, how much it's going to cost, where it needs to go, and such as that. So there's been a lot of time and effort and money spent on the front end of this, making sure that the sewer's okay, that the water's okay, instead of coming in here and trying to zone something and then have troubles after the fact.
And Edison's also working on the sewer issue?
Yeah. So yeah, the sewer requires Mr. Owens and one other easement, and it'll tie directly into the Griffin lift station, which is the lift station that's right below Costco on Old Griffin Road. Not a lot of improvements required for that, but the outfall alone is pretty lengthy. I want to say it's like maybe 1,700 feet. So
Who owns the booster pump once it's been installed and operational?
So the booster pumps are owned, and they're required ownership by the EPD, by the counties. You can't have a private water booster pump system like that because it's domestic water. and it would create environmental hazards and such. Paulding County already owns a booster pump there. We're merely replacing it with a better booster pump. So we're not proposing to add a booster pump. We're proposing to improve a booster pump.
On the front of these homes, is it gonna be all stone, all brick?
It'll be all stone or all brick.
Okay.
They're not, currently, they have no intentions to do a combination.
Okay.
But it will be all of a masonry styled product for sure.
Okay.
Planning Commission, any further questions to the applicant? Mr. Hofstadter, do you have any questions to the applicant?
I think it was already answered.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, any questions?
Jonathan, you gonna mass grade this piece of property?
I knew you was gonna ask that, and to be truthful with you, when you're building 80-foot wide, 12,000 square foot lots, and you're putting a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot house on there, the term mass grade is almost inevitable. You're gonna build the road through there, which is 50 feet wide, and then you're gonna build the front setback, which is 25, and then you're gonna build a house that's 60 with a backyard that's 20. So when you get done, out of a 12,000 square foot lot, you're gonna end up clearing and padding out 100 foot deep. So you're 300 foot wide coming through there. The perimeters and the backyards will be left as unnatural as possible, depending on topography. This is a 54 acre development with 2 creeks, one in the front and one in the back. So the disturbed acres will probably be about 32 or 33 acres, but a large portion of it will be mass graded. And no matter what anybody tries to say, that's kind of going to be how it's going to be for an LDQRD or anything less than 12,000 square foot in this county due to topography. They can say they're not mass grading, but the reality is when it's all said and done, it's mass graded.
Well, I appreciate your honesty.
Yes, sir.
Don't like the density.
Yes, sir. It's, the density allows 2.5 units to acre. Currently, you could put almost 133 lots proposed with 158 if we went R2 with sewer. So, I think LDQRD is definitely beneficial to the county because it is protecting the quality of the product, truthfully. And that's just my opinion, but I believe that.
Are there any intentions on the part of the developer to apply for any variances as it relates to the stream buffers?
There's no variances that's intended unless for some reason at that creek crossing, we exceed the Army Corps of Engineers requirement for 199 linear feet.
But then you will have already dealt with the Army Corps on that.
Yes, and very unlikely that we would do that because the creek's just not that deep. I've walked the property.
Okay.
It should be a 80, 90 foot wide crossing. That wouldn't have anything to do with Paulding County.
I felt that related to your question as well, Chairman Carmichael. But is there any other questions on the part of the Board of Commissioners?
Hey, it seemed like it might have been you, Jonathan, or somebody was looking at this property and trying to figure out how to get water to this location because of the pressure. And it seemed like there was a cross-country line. Have y'all brought that back up as far as to be able to loop the water? I mean, I'm not trying to do the water department's job, but if it's something as far as to make it better for the homeowners and the county itself to get pressure in that location, because I know it's been such a problem, have y'all readdressed and relooked at that line to see if it's an option?
Yeah, and so I know Ray probably knows a little bit about the history, but let me speak and then let Ray ad lib to that if that's okay with everybody. So initially, we evaluated the piece of property that Tommy Graham owns on Macklin Road. They have a water issue as well. And we looked at possibly doing a booster pump at that location with a shared cost, tying this development into that development and doing what's called a joint booster. And although that would absolutely help all of the commercial, the gas stations and that whole area, the utilities and fiber optic that would be around that Macklin and Bobo intersection almost makes it nearly impossible. There's 3 fiber optic lines coming through there, 1 main gas transmission, I think a large water main. So that idea was, for all intents and purposes, abandoned. We looked at trying to tie into Forest Hills and upgrade their booster pump and take Donna Lane's booster pump offline, but Laurie has concerns with having a water line not be in the public right-of-way for maintenance and safety issues. So in other words, we would have had to cut from this road to that road through somebody's backyard with a water line. That's not typically approved by municipalities, because sewer's one thing, but when it comes to water, it's a totally different animal, because it's domestic and somebody could get in there and mess with it, or it can blow out in the middle of the night and flood out houses. There's a lot of reasons why you don't do that. So that one went away. We, the third thing is we looked at putting a booster pump at the front of here, but then that's adding a line to the system. So then they said, well, do an evaluation of the Donna Lane bladder system. So Edison worked with the consultant that works for the water and sewer and determined that, yes, that made the most sense. Take that old system out, upgrade it, and it will enhance the water for not only this subdivision, but for that entire area that's tied into that main. So the idea of the transcontinental water line kind of went away because it just wasn't feasible from a construction standpoint.
Mr. Wooten, would you like to add to?
Yeah, as part of that entire area, we've got some capital projects that we're looking will include the increase of the size of lines along the main roads and, I'm sorry.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm sorry.
Here you go, Ray.
Oh, look at that.
We do have some projects going forward for the entire Mount Tabor area that includes the upgrade of water lines, upgrade of a tank, and also upgrade of the pump station that's in that area. We've been working with Jonathan, Corey, Edison, everybody to come up with a way for them to actually make this a viable project. But there is long-term plans for the entire pressure zone in that area.
Anything else from the Board of Commissioners? Any other questions? At this time, is there anyone else that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? Hearing none. You want to speak on behalf of the application?
I own property and I was not notified of this.
You're wanting to speak in opposition?
I own property right there.
Okay, give me,
where the little lake is.
let me just make sure, I didn't see any hands go up for someone wishing to speak for, so if you have questions, comments, or concerns, come around to the lectern, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to me.
Okay, I'm Dorothy Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
and I live at 105 Candlewood Path, which is
Okay.
right below this property showing on that map. And I own the lake there, the little lake, and I've not been notified of this, and nobody has talked to me about anything about it. So that property would spill over to my lake. So I need some kind of assurance that this lake's gonna be protected from this building.
I will take that into consideration. I will address that with the owner's agent when I bring him back around. Just so that you know, this is just to determine whether or not this proposed use is okay in this location. If it receives a positive review and the Board of Commissioners approve its rezoning, and the developer decides to go through with the development, they will have to submit to plan review, which is a process by which they will look at exactly that concern to ensure that the development does not disturb adjacent properties, particularly as it relates to stormwater, whether sedimentation running into your lake or otherwise. If you see something like that that is occurring, please notify the county so that they can address it as soon as you see it. But I'll ask that to be a consideration when I bring the applicant back up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
I just more have questions really because I couldn't really get a lot of information in my phone call. My name's Anthony Long.
Anthony?
Yes, I live, the house I own is right across the street from the development.
Did you say Long or Law?
Long, L-O-N-G.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question was a couple of things. I know I heard them say that there's going to be an HOA restriction there. One of the things that's been to me has been a really big problem, and other friends in the county, is some of these develops end up becoming rental properties for some reason or another. Maybe the builder gets bankrupt and he no longer is able to develop the property and somebody else picks it up. So I was wondering, is there going to be in the HOA a stipulation that only allows 5 or 10% of the homes to be rentals? Is that part of this zoning automatically?
I will ask that question of staff shortly.
Okay.
Do you have any further concerns?
Yeah, another thing is I can't really tell from your plat there, the ingress egress off of Mount Tabor. It may be directly across from my property. I'm not quite sure. I'm wondering, is there going to be any disturbance or need of property across the street for improvements for all the vehicles coming in and out?
That question would have to be addressed at plan review, and the DOT would have their engineers there to make sure that the location of the drive-in is at the most optimal, safe location.
Okay.
And any kind of disturbance that takes place, they would then more than likely notify you, particularly if they're going to be in your front yard.
Okay. I guess the other thing that I was, I always wonder why somebody comes up and says this is going to be less use and space than what it's zoned currently. I'm sure there's always a reason for them wanting to rezone it. But one of the things that I did hear in another comment on the other application was the amount of people that are going to be going to the schools. I think that's probably something that I already heard in the first application, that this is going to make it really tight. So I'm guessing that a second one in the same area is going to probably means that it's over capacity already. I think that should be taken into consideration.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition or may have questions or comments? Would the applicant please come back to the lectern? And I'm going to do this in combination. You heard the comments that were being made. You had a few minutes remaining if you'd like to address those.
Yeah.
At your own, and then I can ask you other questions, and we will go to staff as well.
Yeah. For Miss Dorothy Williams, the pond that is there directly adjacent, it's our intent to capture all of the stormwater and to take it down our street and put in a detention pond 1. So there will be no discharge from phase 1 into that pond location. We will also be required to put in sediment measures at that location, most likely a temporary sediment pond, to prohibit from any sediment exiting our property. It's a very small tributary that actually goes from our property onto that. It's just it's the front of this piece and the adjacent property, and then it's a high point. So it's not a huge drainage basin to begin with. I'd say it's probably less than 2 acres, maybe 3 at the most that's draining there. But we'll capture the water during stormwater and take it to the detention pond, and then during construction, there'll be a temporary sediment pond at that location.
And the contractor's intent will be to do that during all phases of construction?
All phases of construction,
And
that's right.
post-development as well?
That's right, yeah. Once it's completely built out, the house will be sodded in the front and probably sides and rear too, fully grassed, and there'll be that 25-foot buffer that'll be adhered to, and at that point will be the only time when that sediment pond can be removed, is once that everything's established and whatnot in that location. As it relates to Mr. Long, we are basically proposing to enter this development in the midpoint of our frontage. Our frontage is roughly, I think, 300, and let me look at the survey and I'll tell you. I want to say it's like 350 foot of access frontage, and we are proposing to enter roughly in the middle. 270 feet, so roughly halfway in the middle is the intent. I'm not exactly sure where Mr. Long is, but most likely our entrance will probably be across the street from his home if he lives across from that property.
Any disturbance on his side of the road, will the contractor
So it's an
notify him?
80-foot right-of-way through there. There was a note by staff that they had concerns that it may not fit inside that. Typically, from my engineering experience, we can fit a left turn lane on a double-sided shift in an 80-foot right-of-way. It will encroach in the right-of-way, but not onto their property. In the event that we find that that's not the case, then we would have to meet with them and acquire property from them. But like I said, being that it's an 80-foot right-of-way, 45-mile-an-hour speed zone, and the site distance is pretty good right there, I don't foresee us having to do property acquisitions.
But you would first have to seek design approval by the Paulding County DOT.
Paulding
for
County DOT
location.
will dictate where we come in, how we come in, what elevation we come in. Georgia's staff is very detail oriented as it relates to entrances for this county.
The question related to the HOA and rental percentages, do you have anything to address there?
It's not intended to be rental at all. I don't know if the zoning category itself limits. I'd rather defer that to Chris, because I think there's a limit in the zoning, but I don't want to say that and then like I'm not telling you guys the truth. It's not intended to be a rental. Now, just like any subdivision in any county in the United States, if you buy a house and you live there for 3 years and you pay your mortgage down and you want to move somewhere else and rent that house, you have the rights to do that. That I don't think is what he's possibly talking about. I think he's more talking about a company coming in and building 50 rentals and that company owning them, and it become, that's absolutely not the intent. That this builder does not do that. But I'll defer to what the ordinance requires as it relates to legalities.
Chris, do you mind addressing that?
I'll be glad to. First of all, I just want to let you know, at this current time, the Board of Commissioners passed a moratorium on rental communities, and that runs through November. And so at this time, we couldn't even take an application by an applicant that had any proposals for a rental community. And they signed paperwork saying, no, this is totally fee simple. The zoning ordinance, the low density quality residential, is a fee simple district. It's not, it doesn't just spell that out and have what a number of rentals can go in there, but we would not have accepted this application at all for consideration and submittal to y'all to consider at this time because of the moratorium. And so they are pretty much went out on the line and with the paperwork saying they will not rent this as a rental community.
And I understand the paradox. Mr. Phillips and I have had a number of conversations about it, so it is a difficult situation to try to manage.
It very much is.
And then we had a question with relating to the schools. Do you, Mr. Hofstadter, I don't know if you want to address that or?
No, I just appreciate the heads up, so we can plan for it.
Yeah.
Any kind of donations anybody wants to give, we're accepting.
Is Roberts gonna be overcrowded?
It's gonna get I mean, it's projected to grow anyway, just because of the amount in there. With this kind of build out over a 4-year period, and if you add both of these developments together, it'll continue to become better. We will have to look at some potential options there.
That's the R word, right?
Well, it's either R or B.
There. It's a shell game either way. Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners? Thank you very much. At this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2021-18-Z. Please keep in mind there are 8 original stipulations listed. We have 2 voluntary stipulations, number 9 and 10. One is a 6-foot wood privacy fence in the location specified, and no detention or upstream from the property owned by Mr. Owens' home, which is on the west side of the property. So at this time, do I have a motion for this application? Yes, sir.
Back to the applicant. Was the water system improvements a proposed self-stipulation?
It's frankly a requirement to meet the code, so it's on us to do the improvement,
So when you go back to.
through plan review
This is
process.
one of those where you may not need a stipulation for something that's already in ordinances and discussion with staff. So.
I agree.
The way that I would see it, and I do this in other municipalities, is you have to adhere to the development regs. Development regs say X. If you've got to do Y to accomplish X, then you got to do Y to accomplish X, or you don't get to develop, so.
If this requirement is already in the development regs, I think most of the staff already understand my opinion on adding stipulations that are not necessary.
Yeah.
But if it is necessary, and I would defer to Mr. Wooten on that one, if you want the stipulation there, we will add it.
Well, it's already.
It's a requirement. Thank you.
Yeah, let's don't overcomplicate it.
Thank you. So I have 8 stipulations and then added to 2, which is a 9 and a 10. So do we have a motion to do something with this application?
I'll make a motion to approve with the 10 stipulations.
I have a motion to approve with the 10 stipulations, the 8 original and the 2 added. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Hearing none, that motion then fails. So do we have a motion with regard to application 2021-18Z?
I move we deny the application.
I have a motion to deny the application from Mr. Henson. Is there a second on that motion? Is there a second on that motion? Okay, that motion fails. It won't be tabled, it'll fail.
Tabling is always another option for further study, particularly if there are unresolved questions.
But a motion to table would have to be made.
Yes.
So is there a desire to look into this development further? Do we need to table? I will entertain a motion either way.
I make a motion to table the application
I have a motion to table the application until what date?
to the next meeting.
To the next meeting of this body?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Have a second from Ms. Fitzgerald. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes 3-2. So, for a tabled motion, do we still forward that to the Board of Commissioners for their consideration as an override?
No, it's tabled to
Thank
the
you.
next, the
Just
next
wanted to make
planning
sure.
commission.
That doesn't happen often. So the application will be forwarded to the next meeting of the Planning Commission scheduled. You'll need to get with Leah. I'm sure she can tell us when the next one will be for September.
28.
For the 28th? Okay. So for the 28th. Next application.
The next application is 2021-19Z, application by Ryan Lawrence, requesting to rezone 8.1 acres from R2 Suburban Residential District to B2 Highway Business. It's for commercial use and obtain special use permit for a parking storage lot. Property is located in land lot 779, District 2, Section 3. Property address is 2844 Villa Rica Highway, this is Commission Post 2. Staff's recommended approval with 3 printed stipulations. We've had no cause of opposition, and the applicant is present. And Mr. Chairman, if it would be okay, I would like to go ahead and read the SACT application as part of this proposal. And,
Please.
but they both have to be considered separately.
We'd have to consider them separately, yes.
Application 2021-04 SUP. This application by Ryan Lawrence requesting a special use permit to construct and operate a secure parking storage facility, lot for trailers, RVs, and boats. Property is in land lot 779, District 2, Section 3, and address is 2844 Villa Rica Highway. Staff is also recommending approval on the SUP, and again, we have no opposition, and the applicant is present.
The applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name to the chair, and any comments.
Do both applications?
Start with the first one, and
Okay.
then we'll roll into the SUP.
Okay.
Or LUP, SUP, yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, I'm Ryan Lawrence. We have a piece of property on Villa Rica Highway that is 8.1 acres, but we would only be using 4.5 acres of it with a DXL lane in the front on the southbound lane of Villa Rica Highway. We would have a privacy fence around the front with landscaping, and then chain link fence around the other sides with heavy buffered tree and vegetation along with that. And let's see, the concrete DXL lane, concrete apron, and out of the 8.1 with the detention pond, it's 5 to 5.5 acres that will be developed. That's all I got.
Have you read and understood and are agreeable to the 3 stipulations recommended by staff?
Yes.
And if it's no objection, we can go ahead and discuss the SUP as it relates to this. Mr. Lawrence, if you would.
Yes.
Do you have anything further to add for the SUP?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Have to make sure they're both heard, so. Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Is it only for trailers, RVs, and boats?
Yes, sir.
No big trucks?
No big trucks. There's actually, I think a mile up from us, somebody's putting in something for big trucks. So there will not be big trucks on ours.
All right, thank you.
This is just to leave, I live in a subdivision, my stuff's in the backyard, so it's like, yeah, let's do this.
And condition of vehicles and equipment left there are gonna be in working order, not,
That is correct.
it's not an impound yard.
That is correct.
What kind of, is it gonna be gravel, pavement, what kind of, surface you gonna have them parking on?
Right now, what we've gone for is a geotech fabric with 4-inch GAB base and then a 4-inch 36 stone base.
That'll knock mud off the tires.
Yeah.
What's your proposed parking spaces? How many?
I think we're at 200 parking spaces. They range from 50 foot to 25 foot based off of the property.
The turn islands that you see on the perimeter of the property, are they proposed to be concrete, natural, what?
Yes, they'll be concrete curb and gutter, and then the islands will be landscaped.
But the remainder's gonna be gravel.
Yeah.
My only other question is, how in the world are you gonna get in and out of that road? Because it's usually, that's one of the worst areas along Highway 61 from Dallas to Villa Rica.
Right, right, and that's, I know they're talking about widening that road now.
Yeah, they've been talking about it about 25 years.
Yeah, I know, I don't know, I guess they're putting stuff to it now, because they've already approached us about how much they would need of our property.
Hiram would tell you not to hold your breath. We've been waiting for the same thing on 92 since 81.
Oh, good. But I mean, there's a very long sight line from where the church is, the Mount Zion Baptist Church, which is just north of it, and then the McDonald's and Sunoco station to the south of it. There's a large sight line right there.
So I have a question for Chris. This is in the corridor overlay district. So the overlay district requires, if you're building, a combination of brick, stone, and stucco, correct? How would that pertain to a parking lot?
Well, on the parking lot itself, because they're technically not proposing a structure at the time, if they did come back and propose like an office, propose an office, that would have to meet that standard. As far as the overlay district with I guess a rental parking lot, that if it is visible from the highway, then there would be some certain increased landscaping and some paving standards. He's planning to add a fence and a screening of landscaping along the front to make it where you can't really see it in the back. And so that was intended, I believe, by the applicant to shield and to try not to have almost $1 million asphalt fee.
Okay, so is the fence, what is the height of your fence that you're putting in?
We were proposing 8 to 10.
Okay, and your tree buffer, is that gonna be 8 to 10 feet of trees?
Leland's will get 30 foot.
But what size are you planting? And how
at the
long will
beginning?
it take to get to the size of the fence? So when you're driving, I'm looking at it
Yeah.
aesthetically.
Aesthetically, yeah.
You know, so a corridor, the overlay corridor is supposed to create a very a pleasing aesthetic as you go down the road.
Correct.
And so with something like this, if you've got fence, sometimes, often you see a fence this high and then you see these trees.
Yeah.
Well, there's my buffer. Well, they're only 2-foot trees and may
Right.
take 10 years. or I
No,
don't
we
know
would
how
go
long.
with 10 foot, start off with 10-foot Lelands and then small shrubbery around the front of those. So you would, at 10 foot, if we do an 8-foot fence, those Lelands would be 2 foot up above.
Okay, so would you mind if we put that in as a stipulation?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
To piggyback off that, Chris, is the visible aesthetic something that they take into consideration through plan review when the site comes in for development approval?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, is there a possibility that DOT would require him to, since this is a heavy traffic area, would he be required to put in turning lanes?
State DOT.
I believe he's gonna have to go to the Georgia Department of Transportation and apply for an encroachment permit. So as part of that process of granting a driveway, they would go through all the different criteria required to service the development.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? I'm gonna give you a break, Mr. Hofstadter.
Did actually-
Okay, good.
First of all, thank you for not building houses. But second, assurances about hazardous waste storage, commercial vehicles. I'm not sure what's in the ordinance or this. What can you tell me about hazardous waste storage?
I don't think we're gonna allow, I mean, the plan was not to allow commercial vehicles. It was strictly boats, trailers, RVs, stuff like that.
So there's no intentions of dropping a propane tank anywhere or anything like that?
If they're on the trailer. We'd have to look into that.
Or any permanent propane stations or anything like that?
No, there won't be permanent propane stations. All it is just strictly for parking until use.
Just close proximity to one of the elementary schools that's within our risk hazard area.
Okay.
And hazardous waste, or hazardous materials proximity is one of the things
Sure.
You have to mitigate it.
I understand.
So I just want to have assurances that if the ordinance already calls of no permanent or long-term storage of any type of hazardous waste or fuel or any kind of explosives.
Not incidental to, say, an RV,
Well, right.
because the RV will carry propane. You're talking about commercial tanks.
Yeah, there won't be any sort of filling tanks or
Storage of fuel tanks.
right, correct.
Do you want us to seek a stipulation to that effect?
I would like some assurance
Would-
just for that, but also I don't know again if the ordinances already have that built in under the special use permit.
That I would have to defer to staff on. Chris, are you familiar with it?
If not in the ordinance, then I would like a stipulation.
In this case, a stipulation would be required or needed.
Mr. Lawrence, would that be agreeable to you?
Very agreeable.
So an additional stipulation, this will be the second added stipulation, right? And this would be for the prohibition of any hazardous material storage in a commercial capacity.
And you said that you were not gonna store commercial vehicles. Can we add that as well?
Yeah.
I'm writing it down, sorry. I didn't see you writing it. Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions?
Yes, sir. Tying into Deborah's question, the aerial, who's in control of the screen there? Can you put the aerial up?
I think they're moving now. There we go.
That's hard to see in there. There's one home on that stretch, which takes up about 1/5 of the length along State Route 61. And it's got nice hardwoods along there. As far as a good buffer, a complete buffer, you could leave some hardwoods and then add the Leland cypress, which to me would make a much better buffer than if you just mow all those down and then go back with the Leland cypress.
The northern end of that piece of property is unusable. You can't use any of that because the grade's real steep, so all that was planned to be left there.
What is the plan for the house?
It's dilapidated as it is.
Yeah, I started saying, I think it's falling in.
Yeah, it's fallen in real bad. I already treasure troved it and there's nothing there.
And as far as the question, as far as the turning lane, George, in a normal situation, with your experience on a road such as this, I know it's a state road, but in a normal situation, would a left turn lane be required for this?
Yes, I believe they're going to require right and left turn lanes to service this type of development. In the past, I've seen it.
And I know it's just your opinion, but.
Well, back to my question, why wouldn't you leave the natural buffer that's there, or at least part of it? I know it takes up parking space, but again, we're talking about aesthetics.
How much of a buffer? Like, I mean, talking.
We use a typical 25-foot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's doable. I don't see any, up until where the house is.
Isn't there a creek on the back line?
On the back line, there's a creek, and it runs the back line up to the north end and then cuts under the road.
Because you have to leave mandatory buffer along it.
Yeah, we're gonna have 75, I think it's actually a 100-foot buffer, because it goes way downhill at that point, which it's not worth grading. And that's the whole.
So you got the buffer, but you're also challenged by topography of the back of the property.
Correct.
So as I read it right now, that would be an additional consideration or stipulation of leaving the natural buffer along the front of the hardwoods of a 25-foot buffer. So from the edge of property back into the property by 25 feet.
Okay.
Mr. Carmichael, does that address what your concern is?
It does.
Okay. And you're agreeable to that change?
Yes, sir.
So your entrance would probably be in the area of that old house anyway, wouldn't it?
There's actually an entrance there now. You can see it
I see it.
on the plan. It's just a small asphalt entrance, and that's about where the entrance is gonna be proposed. That gives us the available sight line up the road and down the road.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners?
I have a question. I'm just concerned about the traffic when the schools go in and out, and plus the traffic on the highway. I do have a concern regarding that. It's really hard to get in and out as it is when the schools are in. But I guess, George, could you help me on that? I mean, there's a lot of kids that drive to Paulding County High School, and that's my concern.
Right. There is an active project on this section of 61 that goes from 278 down south of Dallas-Nebo Road for a 4-lane widening. Right now, the current schedule shows a construction let, I believe, of this year, but it's delayed right now. I believe they're still in the right-of-way phase. GDOT is preparing a project change request form at this time. I don't believe it's been finalized yet, but they're going to push it out in the future. I don't know how much further into the future, but again, that is going to be a 4-lane roadway through there with a median divided section. I can look at the the intersection of Hart and determine and get with you and let you know what that intersection is proposed to be with the 4-lane itself. But I believe, obviously, knowing the traffic, knowing the growth, that is a project they're working on towards getting to the construction phase. One of the many in Paulding County, as you know.
George, isn't that right above there, just north of there? That's the dollar store and that street. They're both right turn in, right turn out because of the same issue, correct?
I'd have to look at it, but again, GDOT will determine during their, the encroachment permit process, what kind of, access they will allow, whether it be a full access, right in, right out, et cetera. And again, that will also change too with the future 4-lane, because again, there's gonna be a median through there, and likely not everybody who has full access at this time is going to have that in the future too. I think traffic in that area right now is about 16,700 vehicles per day. On this type of a roadway, you're looking at roughly 18,500 vehicles a day in terms of planning level volumes when you need a 4-lane roadway. So they're approaching that number very, very quickly.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Any further questions from Planning Commission? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone else want to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2021-19-Z. We have 3 original printed stipulations as proposed by staff. As I count, we've got 4 additional stipulations. The 3 that I wrote down were no storage of hazardous material of commercial uses, no commercial vehicles, and then leaving a natural 25-foot buffer along the front of the property of the original hardwoods. And then there was the, call that out for me if you would.
I just have a 6-foot fence, and then, with the,
Leland cypress for,
the same height as the fence.
where the hardwoods aren't competing with it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do I have a motion on this application?
Motion to approve with the 3 printed stipulations and the 4 additional stipulations.
So I have a motion by Mr. Henson for the approval of the application with the 3 listed stipulations and the 4 added stipulations. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second from Ms. Seaver. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes 3-2. and it will be forwarded to tonight's meeting of the Board of Commissioners. The applicant must be present for it to be considered. Anyone else that has an interest should be present also. We need to do the SUP, so I don't want to forget that. And these stipulations are for the zoning. So for the SUP, do we have a motion to do something with, let me call that number out, SUP 2021-04-SUP?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve the SUP by Mr. Henson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Seaver. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes 3-2. And, I'm just going to make you wait a second. At this time, we're going to adjourn for a couple of minutes, maybe 5, and allow the remainder of the cases to come in and take up residence. All right, we will call the meeting back to order. We have some business from the first part of the session to address. At this time, with regard to application 2021-18Z, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we rescind the tabling of that previous motion and to reconsider the motion again on 20-21-18-2.
I second.
Z.
Z.
I have a motion to rescind and reconsider application 2021-18Z from Mr. Henson. I have a second from Mr. Leggett. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. So at this time, refresh your notes. Would like to entertain a motion with regard to application 2021-18Z.
I'll make the same motion to approve with said stipulations.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Steele with the 8 listed stipulations and then the 2 added stipulations, correct?
Correct.
I second
I have a second from Ms. Seaver. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 3.
What's the count?
5-0 and 1. Thank you. I don't know who laughed over there, but quit doing that. I think I even wrote it down that way. Sorry. All right. Moving on. Mr. Robinson, if you would introduce the next application.
Okay, next application is 2021-20Z, application by Bernice Lynn Geyer, requesting to rezone 7.75 acres from R2 suburban residential to A1 agricultural. It's to build a 26 by 52 concrete slab for a dog kennel for the proposed operation of a K-9 boarding and training business services. Property is located in land lots 961 and 962, District 19, Section 2. It's located at 478 Forkwood Way. It's in Commission Post 3. Staff has recommended denial, but if the board chooses to approve, you recommend 2 printed stipulations. And just to note that we've had multiple calls and correspondence in opposition to this one, and the applicant's present.
Is the applicant present? Please come forward, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. And because we had a break, and just want to reiterate this for everyone, each side, those that wish to speak for an application and those that wish to speak in opposition will be granted 15 minutes. That's cumulative time. So if more than one person wishes to speak, you're occupying a portion of that 15 minutes. All comments will be directed from that podium to me, the chairman. And then I will ask back the questions that need to be asked after that portion is over. If you would, you've signed in?
I did sign
If you
in.
would state your name and address your comments to me regarding this application. Thank you.
May I give you guys documents,
Yes.
handouts?
We can share, that's no problem.
My name is Bernice Lynn Geyer, and I am part of K9 OTC, originally established in Topeka, Kansas, been in business over 20 years. We relocated here. There was a great need for our services here. K9 OTC has been in business over 20 years, is very experienced in training dogs of specialized work. Although we do work with civilian dogs, pets, we specialize in police canine, service dogs, PTSD dogs, those type of dogs. We are part of the IACP, which is the International Association of Canine Professionals. Moses certified in narcotic
Ms.
dogs.
Geyer, hold on just a moment. If you have an audible device, please turn it off or to silence. If you wish to take a call, you can step out to the vestibule. Thank you. And Ms. Geyer, would you mind leaning into the microphone? I respect your
Sure.
precaution, but if you would lean in, I have a
Sure.
hard time hearing you.
Mo's my partner, the owner of K9 OTC, is a certified trainer in narcotics and police service dogs. I want to address the possible community concerns, excessive traffic, barking, loose dog, and smell. We're not a doggy daycare. We don't want daily service. We don't want people coming daily. 80% of our service is dogs that we have bred and trained, and we sell to the person needing their service. We envision having maybe 4 client dogs per month. And when I say client dogs, I really mean like pet dogs. For behavior modification. And when I say behavior modification, I do not mean dogs that are vicious or biting dogs. I mean dogs that don't heal well, or dogs that get into the trash, or, things like that. Excessive barking, our kennel is to be designed with quiet board water-resistant panels in the roof to absorb the majority of the noise through the rooftop, as well as the separate privacy fence that will go directly around it to send the sound up if the dog should make any noise. However, dogs seldom bark at things that they cannot see, which is another reason for the fence going around, privacy fence. Boarding trains are housed indoors, so they're not relevant to the sound issue. Loose dog, in 20-plus years, K9 OTC has never had a loose dog because of the precautions that are taken. Dogs are kenneled, but the fence is put up as a backup security in the event that one dog should get loose. We train with leashes and only practice off-leash training in the safety of a closed-in area such as a building or a fence. We do have a building on site in which we had planned to train in there. Smell and disposal of waste. Our kennel has been built with, we do have the concrete slab already on the premises. We do not have the kennels. The concrete slab has been built with a drainage system in it that has its own dry septic system. All feces would be picked up daily. They would not go down into the septic system, only urine. And those are put in waste bags and disposed of. We also wash our kennels daily, 3 times a day, with a product called Wizzy Wash. This product leaves the area completely sanitized, smelling fresh, and even kills parvo. This stuff is amazing. How we benefit the community. K9 OTC is registered with the Department of Veterans Affairs to train PTSD dogs. K9 OTC supports our veterans by donating trained PTSD dogs. Most of the time, our donated dogs come from the animal shelter. Most of the licensed canine trainer for multiple police departments, and as a result, his training has assisted in many apprehensions, drugs, and weapon finds, and most importantly, protected our police officers while doing a dangerous job. K-9 OTC trains service dogs to assist individuals with various physical challenges, such as mobility. Letters of recommendation and success stories. Inside your packet, you'll see a stapled amount of recommendations, police officers, people who have disabilities, a lady that works for the Department of Veterans Affairs that has a PTSD dog that she, I don't know the word I'm looking for, I'm sorry. She lets the veterans utilize to help them through their issues. The next page is reviews, multiple reviews. Most of our work is done internally. This is what we know, this is what we do good. We, do all the searching you want. We've never had an accident. We take the utmost precautions. We will be installing fences. We don't want to be, a bother to anybody. We just want to do good with what we do best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Geiger, if you will bear with us, we may have some questions from the Planning Commission.
Sure.
There were two stipulations listed, and again, from the staff, that if this were to be approved, those stipulations be added. Are you familiar with them?
Yes,
And you're
the
agreeable to
10
them?
kennels, and yes, it would only be 10 kennels.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I have a few.
Sure.
Is this your current residence?
Yes, it is.
Are you currently boarding or training dogs there now?
I have taken single boarding dogs inside my home, not in a kennel.
Okay, and you built the 26 by 52 pad as anticipation to doing this
Yes,
building?
yes, I did. And I also, I'll let you complete your questions.
You say you haven't had accidents, or you're speaking of historically what you've done. Where have you been doing these activities before?
So there is, in Topeka, Kansas, the facility just closed down July 17th in anticipation of moving here. Moses is still in Topeka, Kansas, and he's had his facility there for 20 years.
How long have you been a resident at this property?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
I bought the house in March.
Okay.
And I've been a resident of Powder Springs since 2009.
Okay, so Forkwood Way may not have a neighborhood name, but it was originally planned as larger residential lots in a residential area.
Mhm.
So you're aware of that by looking at the other lots and looking at the surrounding zonings.
Are you saying, did I realize that it was a residential neighborhood?
Yes, and if you
Yes.
look at, and you've probably been working with staff, with Mr. Robinson, and you may notice that their recommendation is for denial, probably based on the fact that everything around you is zoned R2, is residential.
Yes.
And you're looking for an ag use inside a residential area.
Yes. I actually have my original application here in which I had actually applied for a special use application. I have that notarized and everything, in which I went to turn in and asked them if I did everything correctly, because I've never done this before. And Chris Robinson, I believe I seen you, yeah, had actually advised me to do a rezoning application so that I would not have to deal with special use. Under his advisement, I changed my application. I didn't know any better. I thought that was what I was supposed to do to, get where I needed to get to. So I would be happy to, because the kennel is set back far enough to where I could remain as residential 2, I believe is what it is now. But he was also saying that we would gain 100 feet setback by switching to agricultural. But other than the 100-foot extra setback and then not having to do the special use, I don't have any other gain from rezoning to agricultural.
I believe that, I'm sorry. I believe it is the proper zoning, the agricultural. But also, I have concern with it being in a residential area. Even a special use permit, in my opinion, would not be applicable for what you're planning on doing. This is actually one of the first subdivisions in Paulding County that was developed back in the 60s and 70s, so that's the reason there's such big lots. I agree that, it should be in agricultural if it was gonna be, but it's everything around you's residential, so.
I understand that. Before I bought the house, I really did try to do all of my research. I do know that I needed at least 5 acres to even have a kennel. I have an email here in which I emailed and I specifically said, I'm looking at purchasing this property. These are my goals and my intentions for the property. Would I be able to do this getting the special use permit? And the response is back here saying, yes, you do meet the special use permit. Operating kennels currently is zoned for an R2, and you can plan to keep it as R2, or you can switch to A1, which will allow you to operate the kennel with the 200-foot setback. I mean, this was before I bought my house. So I feel like I took the proper measures, and I'd be happy to share this with you guys if you'd like. And did my best with the information that I was provided by planning and zoning.
You are, as a property owner, you have the right to apply for either an SUP or a rezoning to A1 or a rezoning to B2 or I1 or whatever. You have the right to apply, and you have a right to a public hearing, provided that you go through the processes, pay the fees required. That does not inherently mean that it's going to be approved in either of those cases or scenarios. So what we have before us is an application for a rezoning to A1. We can consider that, and we can ask the questions that we need to ask, and we'll hear from anybody else that may be here supporting you. And we'll hear from those that are here in opposition or just may have questions or concerns. And then we'll make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. But that is the extent of our involvement at this moment in time.
Right.
We can address what's in front of us. What's in front of us is a rezoning from R2 to A1.
Right.
And I can tell you from my history of sitting here, and the Board of Commissioners have given me the privilege of doing so for quite some time, I've rarely seen anything that involves kennels, particularly that doesn't elicit strong responses, both the lovers of animals and those that don't necessarily want that facility next to them. So we'll hear everything that we need to hear, and then we'll make the recommendation.
Yes, sir.
So is there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Who was the email directed to?
Leah Wilson.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant? Board of Commissioners, any questions?
She complies with the setbacks, then she's within the parameters that we're looking for, so what's the problem?
But I don't know that there is any problem. For her to change the zoning as it currently sits from R2 to A1 requires this process. So we'll listen to those that are for it and those that are against it, and then make a decision. I'm sure we're going to hear some reasons why from those that wish to speak against it. We've got letters for that as well.
Well, I would assume setbacks for noise and for barking, but again, if you comply with them and you're within our rules and regs.
Well, and from our perspective, or at least my perspective looking at it, it's whether or not it complies with the comprehensive plan, future land use map, and then whether or not it is the right decision for the health and well-being of the community that it's going to exist in. So that leaves consideration outside of just black and white, do you meet the setbacks or not? So, and that's going to be left up to the individuals here as to make that recommendation.
My only other thought was, the number of kennels, is there anything, is 10 a magic number? What if you had 5?
I believe you alluded to only doing up to 4 or 5 per month. Is that correct? Would that mean that you only had 4 or 5 dogs on the property at the time?
Actually, I said that we would do about 4 board and trains for, those are pet dogs.
Okay.
The rest of the dogs would be our dogs in which we were purchased, training up for police department, narcotics, apprehension, bed bug dogs, PTSD, you know, whatever their goal is.
Understood.
How many of those do you typically have at one time?
I mean, we can have a total of 10 dogs. And that doesn't mean that we're working on all 10 of them. It could mean that we have to retain that bloodline because that bloodline is genetically great for scent work or whatever.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm a little confused. We're talking about, someone had mentioned 10 kennels, but on here it says 10 dogs. So we're talking dogs, like?
We only put single dogs in single kennels, yeah. We don't
Okay.
pair them together.
Okay, so no more than 10 dogs.
Right,
And
the
then,
two are-
where, you said you came from,
Topeka, Kansas.
okay, what type of facility did you have there? What was the, was it commercial zoning, residential zoning, was it land?
We had both. We had residential and then we also had a shop.
And how much land was this on?
We had 4 acres there.
Okay.
Can we ask the question, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
If they went to a special use permit, would the setbacks be lesser? That's what I understood her to say. So currently you have a 200-foot setback like you would in any A1 for horses, cat, you know, any structure for housing animals. A special use for this particular use, would that lessen that to where it was closer to adjoining properties?
A special use, which would be to ask to do a kennel boarding type business in a residential district, would still require the 200 feet. The agricultural district, however, has a little more flexibility with facility and other type of agricultural. And that is, and did you, we talked and we came in, the email in reference to, I'll take responsibility, but normally those, and what Ms. Wilson would be sending out is that your property qualifies to either apply for a special use or an agricultural zoning. But I haven't seen it. I'd be glad to look at it and clarify it, but, and the 10 came from the applicant's actually application that says that they were looking to do fenced out 10 slot kennel on this one right here. And so, yes, a agricultural a dog boarding facility in Paulding County either has to have a special use permit in a residential district or like the R2 district, or it has to have at least a rezoning to agriculture.
I have a question. If it was a special use permit versus a rezoning, would that make it any more likely possible? Like, because when I read your guys' notes, the staff notes that came in via email, I understood what they said, but I didn't think about it because of the advisement that I received. So my point was, if I stuck with my original application that I had taken up to planning and zoning, would I be more in line and realistic with the property?
I don't believe that we would know the answer until we call for the vote. I mean, you can get indications based on questions that you're receiving,
Sure.
but until the vote actually takes place, you know, I don't ask any of the members nor the Board of Commissioners what their mind is concerning how they may vote or may for or against. That takes place once we've received all public comment.
Hey, Jody, I think a little clarification is, either way, it's gonna be presented in front of them, whether it's a SUP or
Yes.
a rezoning. So the only thing would look different is a piece of paper. I mean, as far as, you still gonna be standing up there doing the same thing, just
Yes, sir.
one's a special use permit or one's a zoning, which is, like I said, still has to be approved. one way or the other through them and then come to us at night, so.
Yes.
I don't think it'd make it any easier either way.
The special use, doesn't it come back? You have to come back and vote on there for so many.
Special use typically runs with the ownership of the property, and land use permit comes back every 2 years because it has a sunset. There any other questions from the Board of Commissioners to the applicant?
The only thing would be as far as toward Chris. And Chris, what dictates a kennel? What dictates a kennel? What makes it I mean, there's gotta be a number of amount of dogs that makes it a kennel.
It's pretty much an operation of a business
Okay.
where you're handling training of a dog. I mean, the way the definition section fits is mostly for dogs. It's training, boarding. Sometimes you have other types of, trainings and such for dogs, but it's pretty much spelled out as either a permitted use in the agricultural district, or it is specified as a special use in a residential district in the ordinance. Does that?
Where would your dogs go? Paulding County, surrounding counties, around the state, the nation?
They go wherever they're needed. We actually, we work with people in North Carolina, Colorado, Las Vegas, obviously Topeka, Missouri. We have people requesting dogs all over. Moses is known all over the United States for his work and his talent.
Why did you pick Paulding County?
My daughter's an actress, and we moved here for her career.
Anything else from the Board of Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, if I may
Yes, sir.
follow up on Commissioner Stover's question. A kennel is defined under the zoning ordinance as any premises where any person engages in the business of boarding, breeding, buying, letting for hire, training for a fee, or selling animals. So that, I believe that the intended use would fall underneath that definition.
Planning Commission, any further comments? Oh, sorry, Mr. Dunn?
Is there gonna be a designated fenced area for the dogs to run during the day when they're outside the kennels?
Yes, there will be. But they're in their kennel when they're not being worked. So we have a 30 by 40 building in which most of the work would take place in once we get that temperature controlled. And then there will also be a fence around the direct kennel. That's the trap fence in which if a dog were to slip out from the kennel, that's our backup, because that stays closed. And then if we were taking that dog to an outdoor area other than the shop, we would leash the dog and then take the dog to the fenced-in area.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, that building, I'm assuming is the one labeled building. Is it also have to meet the 200 feet? Because it doesn't look like it does. Is it part of the kennel? When we use the term kennel, are we referring to the cage or the activity or use?
Any kennel structure used in the business would need to meet that setback.
And based on this plat, if I'm assuming that's the building to the south of the 26 by 52, it does not meet that. Is that an existing building or something you guys built recently?
No, that's an existing
Okay.
building. And if we were not able to use that building, we would just make a fenced-in area. There's
Okay.
nothing inside a building that we can't do outside of a building, other than it just, I think, probably may feel safer to other people.
Mr. Steele, the ordinance under the agricultural zoning district, commercial and private dog kennels, provided all outdoor runs, fences, and related buildings, structures shall be located no less than 200 feet from a property line.
Yeah, so this building wouldn't be allowed to be used, or it'd have to be moved?
Or they would have to apply for a variance.
Correct.
Mr. Stover?
Has there been any prior complaints up to this point with, did you say you got 4 animals or 4 dogs there now? Has there been any noise complaints?
No, I don't have 4 board-in trains there now. I've had single board-in trains,
Single,
but
okay.
no, not 4. And no, there have not been any complaints. The only thing close to a complaint is my neighbor across the street. When I was putting up my sign, he just came out and let me know that he was not happy with the, basically, in short, not happy with the idea of me having a kennel. But and even in his words, I asked him, I said, have there been any problems? Have the dogs been any problem whatsoever? And even he said no, he just didn't like the idea.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Ms. Seaver, did you have a question?
In fact, I've actually had the neighbor diagonal to me, their dog actually came up into my yard, and I was able, in my yard, my dog was in my yard, and thankfully she was trained, and I was able to call her back to me.
Ms. Seaver?
What breed of dogs are you having in there?
German Shepherds.
Only German Shepherds?
German Shepherds, Dutch. Dutches are a cross between a Shepherd and a Malinois.
That's the kind we have, isn't it?
Any other questions from the Planning Commission?
All right, so.
Thank you, Ms. Guyer. You may take your seat. May call you back for rebuttal or other questions.
Thank you for all of you listening.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition to this application? If you would, please come to the lectern, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Charles Gloss, and I live right across the street from 478 Forkwood Way. I'm sure, well, I don't know where to start, but I appreciate the questions you guys asked her, because I think it was important to understand exactly what was going on. And she gave y'all a brochure. I don't question her qualifications at all in training dogs. I'm sure she's qualified and all that. I just don't think that this is the proper place to train those dogs. The question was asked why she moved to Paulding County. Well, my question is why she moved to Paulding County in a residential R2 zoning property. West Paulding County, I'm sure would have welcomed her business, her expertise. And I don't know why she chose us, but someone asked, was talking about the R2 zoning. You're right, as far as the eye can see from that area, from that subdivision, is R2. I don't know where any A1 zoning is in that whole area. And it's been covered. You guys have emails and letters. I had a real nice presentation for you guys, but those letters and all just blew it out of the water. I mean, they are all concerning my concerns, so I'm sure you guys have looked at those. So I can, only summarize what we've been discussing. Lynn moved about 6 months ago. She moved there, and she immediately started cutting trees and clearing land. We had no idea what was going on. I mean, people build garages, they move in there. They build garages and they do change their landscape a little bit. But we finally got word in talking to Lynn that she wanted to build a kennel and train dogs. Well, that's fine to me in West Paulding County, but not in a residential area. So we were real concerned about that, and that's why we're all fighting this. And you can look and see how many people here that are opposed to that. Lynn has lived in the neighborhood about 6 months. I see 2 or 3 people, we've got over 100 years and just 2 or 3 people living in that neighborhood. I'm sure the other people here, if it was all added up, be several hundred years of living in that neighborhood. And I see other people wanting to speak, so I'll close with this. She moved in, she wanted to start this kennel. She did not talk to anybody in the neighborhood about it, and I've got lots of other questions, but we'll see what you guys do with as far as zoning goes. But I think the brochure that you give her, or she gave y'all, tells you a little bit about her business. What she said to the board here, I think minimizes what they want to do. The brochure tells you that they want to get bigger, in my opinion. So it's not simply what they're doing now, it's what they're going to do in the future. And I believe if you guys do approve this zoning, that this is not the end of it. I think it's only the beginning of what she wants to do. So I urge you guys not to approve this rezoning. It's not right for the area. It's not, our quality of life, I'm sure, will change for the worse with traffic coming and going. She says it won't be, but they're going to have deliveries, they're going to have clients coming and going, they're going to have all that. So the quality of life, I think, is going to suffer. So I urge you not to approve that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. There are 10 minutes remaining.
My name is Gail Kasika. I've lived on that property about 15 years. My parents bought it about 45 years ago. My daddy built the house, and my father died in the house. I have a 16-year-old granddaughter that as of a year ago was perfectly normal. She fell, and now she's brain damaged. She can walk, but she might be walking across the floor and just all of a sudden fall out. She has extreme seizures, not one a week. She has 5 and 6 a day. She cannot be anywhere without somebody. Heaven forbid her get out there and one of those dogs see her when she starts shaking and having one of the seizures. It would hurt her. That's all I say. Please just don't do this. Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to say that I like to live in peace and harmony with my neighbors. And up to this point, I've always succeeded.
Ma'am, can we have your name, please?
Oh, Iris Lancaster. I live next door to the proposed kennel. As I was saying, up to this point, I've always lived in peace and harmony with my neighbors. That's how I want it. That's how it's always been. I've been in my home for 42 years, and this is a big surprise, a big shock to us. We have always been residential. That's how we bought it. That's how it was planned. That's how we hoped it would stay. And I present to you that as the 3 large German Shepherds that already live on the property are a bit of a noise problem. It is just it's just something that cannot be pleasing to our way of life on Forkwood Way. And we are only 0.6 of a mile long. We're just a small neighborhood. It dead ends right below our houses. I just ask of you to turn this down because of the noise, because of the smell, just because of the wildlife. Please turn this down for the long-term neighbors here on Forkwood Way, that our lives will be very upset. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would sign in, state your name and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon. My name is Ricky Pachun. I bought a property next door to the 448 3 weeks ago. And I think the kennel is not a good idea for me because the runoff from her property runs through my front yard. And the stench, the poop, the feces, it is not good for me and my kids. And I think approving this is not a good idea. I have some letters distributed to you guys of my concerns, and I think the noise level is going to be increased in the future. I do hope you guys do not approve this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak against this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? We have 5 minutes remaining.
My name is Margaret Harkness, and I live at 91 Forkwood Way. I have a question. When she was up here speaking, she said that she was going to be using dogs from local, like a dog pound or places like that. And yet, when she said what kind, it was going to be a specific variety of dog, the Malamute German Shepherd mix. And so there was a discrepancy on that question of what kind of dog she was going to train and take in. She said she was going to be taking in dogs that were, that needed disciplinary type training, like if they were like jumpers, balkers, that kind of dog. The ratio of what she had when she was in Topeka, I did not hear an answer or a question directed at what type of dog she trained there. And she said she only had 4 kennels. She says she has 10 kennels, but she has 3 in her home. So that makes 13. I don't know whether you count the ones that are going to be kept in the kennel particularly, or the ones that are going to be kept in her home. She can always make how many dogs she has by keeping some in her home, which she's currently doing. So I'd like clarification on how many total dogs in the entire compound. And if she does plan on expanding this, I'd like to know whether she has plans on that. I can't understand how she only had 4 kennels in Topeka and had 2 facilities, so that was a little bit confusing for me as well. I am new to the area, so I've only lived there 18 months, but I moved into this area because it was a cul-de-sac. There was not going to be a lot of traffic. My daughter is in a wheelchair, and she does like to go out, but I'm a little leery if this gets approved and we start having how many employees she's going to have, the extent of the traffic that's going to be increased there, and whether the property values are going to go down. Because I wanted a environment that was closed off and not a lot of traffic coming up and down the road. So those are my questions and concerns.
Thank you. We have about a minute remaining. Anybody else that wants to speak? Hearing none, just to address one issue, the 10-dog stipulation was based on the amount of dogs involved in transacting business. She would be allowed, I assume, then to own her own dogs, which would not count among that total. I will ask the applicant to please come back forward to the lectern. Some of the questions that we received, obviously there are concerns about safety, odor, noise. You addressed those in part of your presentation. I don't know that,
Yes, I did, and I'm really surprised to hear that because I've actually asked two of my neighbors, you know, throughout the 6 months that I've been here, are you hearing anything? Any problems? No, multiple times. In fact, Iris was just at my house picking vegetables and fruit with me. Well, not picking them with me. I had picked her some. But she had come up to see the trees and everything. And my dogs stay inside my home. So I don't see that how they would be a nuisance. And I also, I pick up my dog's waste daily. They're not in kennels, they stay in my home, and I pick their waste up daily. And I spray my grass with that Wizzy Wash. So that, I'm a little confused on that. As for the 4 kennels, I didn't say I had 4 kennels. I said we had 4 acres. Also, Miss Deborah, you asked me what kind of dogs. Can you repeat to me again what your question was to me when I responded to you, Shepherds and Malinois?
Yes, I asked you what type of dogs would be,
Do I have?
facility.
Do what?
What type of dogs that you planned on having at the facility?
Yes, mainly those. Now, we can't obviously make a living off of donating. So we would only be donating a certain amount of dogs per year as there was a need, because we don't want to get a dog, train it to be PTSD, and then we don't have anybody to pair that with. Sorry about that.
when you say train it for PTSD, you mean as a service dog?
PTSD service dog,
Okay.
that would be their service, yes.
You are you want 10 dogs for the site. How many personal dogs do you have?
I have 3 dogs.
And how many more do you expect to bring into your house?
Well, it's just me and Mose that train, first of all. We would fill the 10 kennels, but half of those would be filled with our dogs. That would be, those are dogs for the business. They're our dogs, but they're dogs for the business. We can only train so many dogs, just me and him. There's not gonna be more employees. There's not gonna be, people coming to the house every day. We can only train so many dogs, and we only need to train so many dogs. I don't know how to clarify that anymore.
I've heard you mention a couple of times for the business. So you're going to be conducting business out of your home, out of this residence,
It is
correct?
business because we make money off of it, yes.
Do not interrupt the proceedings of this meeting. Thank you.
It is a business because we make money off of it. But I guess to clarify the difference in the dogs is I have a retired girl in my house who's, and I say girl, dog, who's 8 years old. She's spayed. I wouldn't breed her. She is strictly there for my enjoyment. She is not part of the business. Does that make sense? So if we had a dog that we're keeping strictly for the bloodline, that dog is going to be in a kennel. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Well, there was a question about the intent of growing the business. Is there any intent on your part going ever beyond what has been stipulated?
No.
No.
We're only one, 2 people with the same amount of hours in the day as everyone else.
And you did mention about taking or receiving animals from the shelter, animal shelter.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that your specific dogs that you train are the shepherds, the Dutch. You didn't
Yes.
mention Malinois. You said they're a combination of German Shepherd and Malinois, but
Right.
are you only taking dogs of that breed from the shelters? Is that what you meant? Or are you taking other dogs?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
We would never take a dog of that caliber and try to make it a service dog. We would, upon occasion, go, especially if we had somebody that was wanting a service dog and who asked us to use our expertise and seek them a dog, the first place we would stop is the animal shelter. And we would look for a dog, depending on, most of them want a gentle, calm-natured dog who is that wants to comply, who's very people-pleasing. And so that's the type of dog that we would search for.
And there was concern brought by a couple of the speakers. One of them specifically listed runoff from your property to theirs, and how would you address that?
So on the slab, there is the drain, and it goes into a dry well, deep down into the ground. There is no runoff.
As far as noise, how do you control the noise issue?
So the direct fence that would go around the kennels, and when I say around the kennels, I mean the privacy fence will be built 3 to 4 foot all around the kennels. And then there are the noise barrier, things that hang down from the rooftop. We're gonna put a rooftop over to protect the dogs from rain and such. But then there are sound barriers that can hang from the top of that, and it absorbs the sound, the vibrations.
But it's not fully enclosed.
No, it is not fully enclosed. The fence sends the sound up, and
Is the dry well pump that all your waste goes into?
we do not put solids in there. That's only for the urine. We pick up the solids.
And what happens with that?
They go into a waste bag.
Does somebody come in and pick those up? Pick that up?
Well,
How
I have
do you-
not
what do you-
experienced that here. We had a vendor at the shop that picked that up. I don't have that experience here, so at this point, I can't answer that for you, but we would find a vendor, I'm assuming.
Are there any other questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant? Board of Commissioners, any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Geyer.
Thank you.
At this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2021-20-Z.
I move we deny the application.
I have a motion to deny the application by Mr. Henson.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Leggett. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Anybody affiliated with that application, if you would like to leave, you can do so now. Otherwise, we will go to the next application.
work.
I'm not supposed to be here. I'm on the clock now. Mr. Robinson.
Okay. If it's okay with the commission, the next two applications also coincide as the prior one did, since it involves mini storage facility. It's 2021-21Z, application by Chris Cochran requesting to rezone 3.55 acres from B1 General Business and Planned Residential Development District to B2 Highway Business, while concurrently seeking a special use permit for the purposes of constructing a self-storage facility. Property is located in the land lots 537 and 538, District 3, Section 3. Property is located on the north side of Seven Hills Connector, east of Prescott Drive and north of Cedar Crest Boulevard. It's in Commission Post 4. Staff has recommended approval with 5 printed stipulations, and we've had no cause for opposition as such. The application that follows this is application 2021-05 SUP, application by Chris Cochran requesting a special use permit for the purposes of constructing a self-storage facility. Property is located in land lots 537 and 538, District 3, Section 3. Property is located on the north side of Seven Hills Connector, east of Prescott Drive and north of Cedar Crest Boulevard. It's in Commission Post 4, and we also recommend approval on this one.
Thank you. And the applicant is present,
And the
I see.
applicant is present.
If you please come forward, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are proposing rezoning the property that is currently B1. If you recall, it came back, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and we rezoned the rear portion to R55, and the front portion was B1. We are currently developing that 14 acres as commercial B1 development. This is one of the lots in that development. We are not proposing any new land disturbance. This is on a developed pad-ready lot that is existing. We are in a negotiation with a developer to build a climate-controlled self-storage building. This is one building on the lot, and we do have the developer here. He has come down and is willing to speak if you guys have any questions for him. But if not, I'll ask any questions.
I would ask first if you're familiar with the 5 listed stipulations recommended by staff, and
Yes.
you're agreeable to those?
Yes.
If there's any questions to the applicant from the planning commission?
Who is the developer?
Yes, Steve is here with Compass Self-Storage.
How many stories is this gonna be?
3.
And is there gonna be any outside, storage?
There will not be any outside storage buildings, nothing outside. It will be one facility like this, all inside.
So no RVs, no anything, would typically park outside.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions from the planning commission? I'm not gonna assume, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask Mr. Hofstadter if you have any questions.
As previously with the passport, just assurances about hazardous materials storage.
Will there be prohibition against storing hazardous material such as propane, fuel, whatever on site?
I don't believe that's gonna be, you don't mind?
If you would, please state your name and sign in.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Harisco. I'm with Compass Self-Storage. Our parent company is the Amstel Companies. We are based in Cleveland. We have 98 self-storage properties currently in the country in 14 or 15 states. This is a traditional 3-story, all-climate, all-enclosed with an office, leasing office. There is no outside storage, and hazardous waste or hazardous chemicals, whatever, is is prohibited as a standard in our contract with every tenant. And that's the same in every state, every city.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the Board of Commissioners to the applicant? Hearing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, at this time I will entertain a motion for application 2021-21-Z.
Move we approve.
We have a motion to approve with the 5 stipulations.
With the 5 stipulations.
By Mr. Henson.
I recommend that can we add the 6 with the no hazardous materials?
Would there be any objection by your applicant for adding the requirement, the stipulation of no hazardous materials stored on site for commercial purposes, as we did with the previous one?
I'll add that stipulation to my motion.
A second.
We have a motion and a second for approval with the 5 written stipulations and the added stipulation for no hazardous material storage on site. All in favor? The motion passes 5-0 and 1. And then we have a follow-up motion that needs to be made on the SUP for 2021-05-SUP for the same location. We have a motion.
A motion we approve.
We have a motion to approve by Ms. Seaver.
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Steele. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Again, it will be forwarded, both of these, to the Board of Commissioners meeting tonight at 7 o'clock, which is drawing closer and closer as we speak. You get to stay with us, right? Mr. Robinson.
Okay, next application, 2021-22Z application by CS Realty Group LLC, Moore, Ingram, Johnson and Steele LLP, J. Kevin Moore, requesting to rezone 7 parcels from R2 Suburban Residential District to R2 with sewer for development of 80-lot detached single-family residential community. Property is located in land lot 293, District 19, Section 2. Property is on the west side of Poplar Springs Road and Paulding County, and the Paulding County, Cobb County line. The actual acreage is 37.131 acres in Paulding County. It's in Commission Post 1. We've had a call with questions. Staff has recommended approval with 4 printed stipulation, and the applicant is present.
You have the floor.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. I'm Kevin Moore, again, this time here on behalf of the applicant CS Realty in this application for rezoning. This property, as Mr. Robinson stated, is just over 39 acres located in Paulding County. If you're looking at your screen, it is on the Paulding County line. So this property, if you're looking at your screen, the right-hand side is the Paulding Cobb County line, and this property forms the border of the 2 counties. We are proposing rezoning from this existing R2 to the R2 with sewer category, which we turn to the site plan. So when you look at this, you're trying to figure out, well, how are you getting access? Because it's actually accessing on Poplar Springs Road, and this segment of Poplar Springs Road is actually in Cobb County. So our access is through a small portion of property in Cobb County to Poplar Springs. And so when you bring that up, you can see now the access on the right-hand side of your site plan is Poplar Springs Road. And you'll see there's 2 larger lots that are numbered 79 and 80. Those are the properties that are actually in Cobb County, not in Paulding County. And so those are being left as 2 lots to be developed as part of this subdivision in Cobb County with access to Poplar Springs at that location. So just wanted to familiarize yourself with where things are, because it's a little confusing when you look at the maps and you look at the site plan and you kind of try to figure out how these match up. And that's why. It's because that one right-hand side of this property that forms a basic square is the county line. The proposal is for a total of 78 homes that would be in Paulding County, 2 homes that would be in Cobb County. So it's a total of 80 homes for this proposed new subdivision. The density, just to give you some context for that, is 2.05 units per acre. R2 with sewer allows up to 2.9 units per acre. So again, this is one where they're not going to the maximum allowed under this particular zoning category, but instead doing what we think is a very responsible job, especially when you look at the surrounding subdivisions. This area where we if you're on Poplar Springs traveling, you kind of go in and out of Paulding and Cobb. There are many different subdivisions that are and look very similar and consistent in style to this. Nice single-family detached subdivisions in this area, both in Paulding if you travel a little further west, adjacent to it, or if you're traveling east in Cobb County, either way. In fact, we spoke to some folks that were here earlier that had come to ask about some questions on this. We were able to answer their questions, and they were perfectly satisfied and said, we'll go on home now. And so that worked out really well. We had that opportunity to be outside with them. This category R2 with sewer, some of the advantages to it, again, it does require that 25-foot minimum undisturbed and landscape buffer along the perimeter, which we have accommodated in this plan. Even though the entrance is in Cobb County, this will be a fully landscaped entrance as well, with access controlled by Cobb County to give you just some information for any of those who may be interested in for you, even though this segment of street is controlled by Cobb County and Cobb County Department of Transportation. They will be requiring a full deceleration lane as well as a left-hand turn lane on Poplar Springs that must be installed. So that's just my familiarity with their requirements, and this will trigger those requirements for both those road improvements in that location. We also have a zoning stipulation letter that we included on this proposal, dated August 23rd, and we just included some additional conditions beyond the ones that staff had included. We're fully in agreement with staff's comments, their recommendation for approval, and their 4 conditions, and we just added some additional ones so that we're trying to just be as transparent as possible, make sure we're putting what we're committing to in writing, to ensure that there will be a mandatory homeowners association, to ensure that we're aware of the buffer, as well as committing to a minimum house size of 2,000, but these will range up to 3,700 and greater. From a product standpoint, and for a point of information, these will be well into the 400s, probably low 500s in terms of price point. I provided you some sample elevations for the homes that will be built here to give you, again, that illustrative sense of the type of architecture and homes that will be built here. These will largely be front and side entry homes and a mixture of those two from that standpoint to give you that sense of it as well. In addition, we have committed to the architectural designs that you see in those drawings with stipulations as well. The proposal, we believe, is consistent with the area, consistent with any density in the area. This will be another good addition in terms of single-family subdivision and community for this part of Paulding County. Mr. Keith Cannon, who is the principal of CS Realty Group, who's the developer for this project, is here. He can answer questions I might not be able to. And we respectfully request your recommendation of approval, subject to the staff's conditions in our letter of the 23rd. Thank you.
Are there any questions to the applicant?
First question, same as last time. Do we know who the builder is?
At this point, there are CS Realty Group, the applicant, works with 2 or 3 very reputable builders that are local builders and have had a strong, longstanding family-owned presence in this area. Which one has not finally been determined, so I don't really want to play favorites. Since they're both clients of mine as well, I don't want to play favorites right now, but they're sure. Right now, the 2 leading candidates are Trayton Homes and Curley Family Homes, who both had successful projects in Cobb and Paulding counties.
What do you anticipate the price point being on these?
Mid 400s to low 500s.
School district?
Actually, in most of these schools here, they can handle the population at this time.
I guess you know where all the other students are going to go. To, right?
Unless we change it.
Right.
Do you have a build-out timeline actually for this?
So 80 lot. They would hope to start building homes late first quarter of next year. So you would have a build out over probably a 2-year period of time from that point, or less. They would hope less.
Deborah, help me make sure I didn't overlook you. Sorry. Any other questions? I'll make sure I always remember.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions?
I probably could have just asked Brian next to me here, these two, stormwater management areas, do all those homes drain into them? One of you, real engineers, like where they?
If you'd like, I can answer that, Mr. Chairman. This is based on our preliminary hydrology and engineering from the civil engineer. He's over accounted for the area for that stormwater management, but you're gonna have to have them in both locations, it looks like, to make sure you capture the water, from all the lots in the streets, because it falls off in both directions. Thank you.
Is the homes, is this subdivision gonna be equivalent to what's across the street, that Stone Mill, or whatever name it
Yeah,
is?
Stone Mill Creek?
Creek, yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Because it actually touches the HOA, has land between here and Poplar Springs Road, right?
That's correct. If you look at the plan, there's kind of a notch that kind of comes in on the right. That's the HOA property.
So is there any is the HOA with Stone Mill Creek, how do they feel about, because I know that's like a little park that they got there, right, or some sort. I'm trying to think, because I looked at this property at one time, and I remember there was a park, a dog park, or walking trails or something.
Yeah, you're right, Commissioner. The notch I'm talking about, which is on the right-hand side, is off Poplar Springs Road, and it kind of comes into this, keeping it from being a perfect square, is part of that HOA property. It's their walking trails and a little bit of their park-like setting they have there. They're very aware of this. The owner of this property and Stone Mill Creek and their HOA and that development entered into an arrangement for some swap of property that allowed that to happen and allowed him to acquire, the owner, the pieces on the front on Poplar Springs, including the little area you see so that goes down Poplar Springs for the full decel lane, as well as some others. So they're very aware it was part of their arrangement that this would occur. How they feel about it, they haven't reached out, but they're very aware.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone that wishes to speak in objection to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns?
Mr. Chairman, my name's Brenda Paris, for the board as well. My property backs up to the property being zoned for the subdivision located on Poplar Springs Road. The main reason that I am against this zoning is I have an 1.5 acre lake right behind this property. And several years ago, they built another subdivision, which is behind that subdivision that adjoined my property and this property. I have 2 springs that feed my lake. Both of those feed it at this time. When they built that other subdivision, they did so much work in there that one of my main source for my lake, it became a trickle where it was the predominant water. Now the other spring that I have, which is also behind that, I'm concerned that this will do the same thing. When this spring dries up, if it does, and I don't know whether it will or not, then I will not have any source for my lake. I don't have a creek on my property, I just have these 2 springs with the one trickle going in now, and if this becomes a trickle, then this lake will probably dry up. That's my main concern. The other concern that I have is the traffic is so bad on Poplar Springs Road. It is a cut through from Dallas Highway over to Macklin Road, and they just fly through there. When this subdivision is built, it will be a nightmare. We already have the addition to Eccles Farm, which is also on Poplar Springs Road. that is also causing the same thing. Traffic is horrendous in that area. And my other main concern is this property, as well as my property, is deer, turkeys. It's a habitat for these. When this does away with this, then we will not have any place for these animals to raise their young. So that is my main concern. I know that this is probably going to happen, but I wanted to express my concern mainly for my lake as well as the traffic.
Ms. Paris, does the spring that feeds the lake originate on your property or
Yes.
on the property in question?
It originates on my property, but it comes down under the ground through all of that property there, as well as the other subdivision. I have two springs. The other one sort of dried up a little bit when they built the other subdivision behind that one.
Okay.
Now I only have the other one trying, and I will not, it'll dry up because I don't have a creek on that property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, concern regarding this application? Sir, if I could ask you to come back to the lectern. Only one person speaking, having some concerns about the development. It's significant to them about being able to maintain the integrity of their lake. Is there anything that the developer can do that would address those concerns?
The stormwater management control is dictated by, county and state standards, but I think that, just knowing Mr. Cannon, who is the principal of CS Realty, and his engineer, Mr. Breedlove, we would suggest, or I was suggesting he would agree on it, turn around, but they can get with Ms. Paris. I'd love for them to do that and get with her, and look at the situation, how her lake is being fed with the spring, and see what they can, see what they can do about working with her towards that end, as opposed to just developing according to whatever regulations and leaving what be. I'm sure there's some things that could be done as an adjacent owner.
I will ask at this time, Mr. Jones, is there anything that you can lend to discussion regarding the traffic situation on Poplar? I know that it weaves in and out between the county and Cobb. Is there anything that you're aware of on the Cobb side? And then is the county considering any improvements in that area because of increased traffic?
I believe the last traffic count we had at the county line, Cobb Paulding, was about 2,700 vehicles a day, and that was in 2019. There's none projects that Paulding has right now. I don't know about Cobb County in terms of if that's one of their areas, we can ask that question of them then.
Okay. Are there any questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant? Board of Commissioners, any questions?
I noticed, Mr. Chairman, that there was no fee attached to the lots like some of the other applications today.
My understanding is that was generated on the other two because they actually entered into a county roadway and traffic improvements would have been directly impacted at that location. Now, if I am wrong, someone please clarify for me. As this one enters into Cobb County right of way.
Yeah, I understand. So we don't care about their roads then.
I doubt George is going to pave in Cobb County. The question can be thrown out there, is there any consideration on the part of the applicant regarding contributions to that nature?
The difference here is what you pointed out, as it was explained to me, is because it's a Cobb County road under Cobb County jurisdiction. That was why the request had not been made.
But it's our citizens.
But it's
I understand.
because there's the improvements that would be done to the immediate system wouldn't be done here. They'd have to be done somewhere else. But that's why. It wasn't asked of us, so.
I understand.
Would you be amenable to it if they did ask you?
I'd want to know where we'd be spending the money.
I would assume it would be there on Poplar Springs that comes into, on the Paulding County side coming into it. That's a pretty narrow, curvy road down through there, and
sure they could use it there.
I think we would at this time defer to the county attorney regarding this question. Is there any consideration that, or anything we need to be mindful of?
Certainly need to be mindful that impact fees have not been imposed in Paulding County. Fees that I think have been worked out on these prior applications have been discussed with staff regarding the infrastructure needs prior to presentation today. As Mr. Moore well knows, impact fees require a lot of statutory requirements, which we, as a county, have chosen over the years not to go down.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions to the applicant from either the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners? Y'all are good? Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
At this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2021-22-Z.
I'll make a motion for approval with the 4 printed stipulations from staff and the additional 12 volunteer conditions that the developer has included. That's my motion.
I have a motion from Mr. Leggett with the 4 listed stipulations for approval with the 4 listed stipulations from staff and the voluntary 12 stipulations added by the applicant. Yes, Mr. Henson.
Could we look at something that would protect Miss Paris and her lake also in a stipulation?
I'm fine with that. If there's something tangible we can put there.
Yeah. Maybe work with the engineers that you have, Mr. Moore, to ensure that her lake stays as it is.
I think if we crafted something that would be along the lines of that the applicant and its professional engineer will meet with Ms. Paris and review her lake and provide information or any evaluation that could be helpful towards maintaining her lake. We can't promise that it'll survive because I'm not sure why it's there or not. We can get with her and make sure that happens. It's pretty well south of where we are, where it actually is, I think. But we would love for our engineer to get with her and they can determine and see what they can do.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion with the 4 listed stipulations and then the 12 voluntary stipulations by the applicant. Is there anything further to say on that before we move forward with a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Mr. Steele. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. And I would highly encourage the developer to speak with Ms. Paris. I mean, most of the time we're concerned with keeping things on the property from running off, but in this instance, if we can maintain the vitality of a lake, it would be in everybody's best interest, including whatever habitat we're disturbing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
Okay, next application is 2102 LUP. Application by Kathy Anderson requesting a land use permit on 2.81 acres for the use of a 12 by 24 building to operate a hair salon. Property is located in land lot 557, District 2, Section 3. Property address is 553 McCready Drive. It's in Commission Post 1. Staff has recommended approval with 1 condition of approval. We have noted 2 or 3 calls of opposition on this one.
Okay. And is the applicant present? If you would please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. Mr. Moore, this application will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners tonight at 7. Thank you. Thought I was going to forget, didn't you?
I'm Kathy Anderson. I live at 353 McCready Drive. I've been in the hair business for over 15 years working at a retail salon. I've always worked in that type of setting, but I decided to move my business to my home Due to my husband is a 100% disabled veteran who stays at home with my 4-year-old son. So I moved my salon, to my property to be closer to both of them.
Thank you very much. That was very short and simple. Is there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Where were you working? Where were you practicing?
In New Hope at the Salon by Brook and Company.
And you understand that this is an LUP, so it is renewable every 2 years, assuming that it receives approval.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it is not transferable. That was one of the stipulations. The one stipulation is it's not transferable to any other owner. It's yours.
Correct.
And your in-home business that you're gonna be running. With your profession, you have to have state license.
That's correct.
And the states require a certain number of bowls, a certain number of sinks.
It is just me in the salon, and I have one sink.
Okay, so you'll meet your state requirements, and then
Yes,
any requirement, will you be building a facility or finishing something existing?
I
work
had
out
the
of?
building built specifically for a salon.
Okay, already, like prior to this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Yes, with the building, when was the building built?
It was just built, it was delivered to me in June of this.
Okay, so it's like a modular type of building?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it air conditioned?
Yes. It's
And-
heating and air. It's one step building, so it's anchored. Everything has been secure and
There's nothing mobile about it?
no.
Okay.
And is this on sewer or septic?
I had a septic system installed for this particular building.
Okay.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions?
Do you know how to cut white hair?
Very well.
How'd your husband get injured?
He served in Afghanistan and Iraq 18 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners?
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to this application? May have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion for application 2021-02-LUP
Make the motion to approve.
with the one stipulation.
Correct.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Steele with one stipulation as printed. Second from Ms. Seaver. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Again, it will be forwarded to tonight's meeting of the Board of Commissioners. You must be present for it to be considered. Just hang around. And Mr. Robinson.
Okay. Application 2021-03 LUP, application by Jennifer and William Odom, requesting a land use permit renewal for a small cabinet shop, repair shop. Property is located in land lot 1033, District 2, Section 3. Property is located on the northwest side of Ship Circle and McClung Road. And like I said, this is a renewal land use permit. I think this is number 3 for Mr. Odom, and he is present. Staff recommends approval. No cause of opposition on this one.
Sir, if you would please sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
My name is William Odom. I live at 704 Ship Circle in Hiram, Georgia. And I'm here to have my LUP renewed, hopefully, for one more time, hopefully.
Yes, sir, you've read the 4 stipulations listed, and you're agreeable to those. I believe they are probably a reprint of the previous ones.
Yes, sir, everything's same.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners?
Question, Mr. Robinson.
Mr. Robinson, you have a question?
over the existing land use permit? Has there been any calls, concerns?
We
any
have,
complaints
we
over
have
the
never
years?
had a complaint for anything on this business or land use permit.
Okay.
So all of his customers are satisfied.
Absolutely.
Neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Odom.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on behalf of the application? Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for application 2021-03-LUP.
Motion approved.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Henson with the 4 stipulations.
4 stipulations.
Second.
Second from Mr. Steele. All in favor? Motion passes. I didn't catch this end. Deborah, you 5-0-1. Again, it will be forwarded to tonight's meeting, Mr. Odom. You must be present for them to consider it. Now shall we move forward?
Okay, next item is the zoning ordinance text amendment. The Paulding County Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners to consider a text amendment to the Paulding County zoning ordinance 2003 as amended. The amendment is in regards to Article 8, Section D, R4 multifamily non-fee simple rental residential district, and Section G, R7 multifamily fee simple non-rental residential district.
Last but not least, Mark's gonna pull up my 50-slide PowerPoint presentation about R4 and R7. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Throw in a little humor. A couple of months ago, the Board of Commissioners did a moratorium on R4 and R7 zoning districts. Planning staff has researched what we have on the ground. We have only 16 of both. There are 11 R4 properties and 5 R7 properties, a little over 300 acres. Our review of the current zoned properties and the text of those 2 zoning districts led us to the conclusion that we need to put these in the inactive zoning district graveyard. You'll recall a couple years ago we inactivated PRD, and we would ask that you recommend the text amendment adopting the ordinance that would inactivate these 2 zoning districts. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have
Are
anything-
there any, yeah, go ahead.
Do we have
please.
anything coming that would replace them? Are we working on anything for the
Yes,
future?
of course, we are working on a unified development ordinance, and we are looking at something that would allow mixed use that would absorb the uses that were permitted in R4 and R7.
And the reason I asked that, and I think most of you know, I've had conversation with several of you, is we saw today how many told us that the house prices were gonna be in the 3s, 4s, and even 5s. So I'm always concerned, and several of you have heard me, my son is about to graduate college and teach high school. Just wanna make sure we have something out there that we can build structures, build something for these guys to live and not have to move out of the county and live elsewhere like I did. I became part of this community with all of you guys by moving here and not being able to afford to live in Cobb. I'm thankful I moved here. I appreciate every one of you. Made a lot of friends here.
Any other questions to Director Lippman?
I have a question. When are we gonna have something that replaces it? Cause I know we spoke about the village.
And that's what we're working on. We hope to have something adopted by January, so my goal would be to put something out for the planning commission and the public to review for all of the changes to the zoning section of the Unified Development Ordinance, so that you could adopt it you could make a recommendation in November, then the Board of Commissioners could adopt it in December to make it available for use in January of 2022.
The lack of there being anything is not the lack of trying on the part of developers. I've experienced quite a few discussions with people wanting to do products that reference that. Are there any other questions to the Director? Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners? Mr. Hofstadter, any questions? Well, thank you very much. I guess we need to open the public hearing for this text amendment, so at this time I will do that. Are there any comments from the public? At this time, I will close the public hearing comments portion, and I will entertain a motion with regard to the zoning ordinance text amendment as presented by Director Ann Lippman.
Make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve from Mr. Steele.
Second.
Have a second from Mr. Leggett. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0-1. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Henson? Oh, come on.
Second.
Mr. Leggett seconded it. All in favor? 5-0-1 right now. Someone help me get up. My legs are numb.